Hey guys, tonight we're sinking into the velvet shadows of the medieval castle, where you, yes, you, are about to become queen. Forget the fairy tales. The real story is colder, heavier, and a lot itchier than you've ever imagined. The fire in the Great Hall is little comfort when the air bites at your ankles, and your first memory of royalty is not glory, but the awkward weight of a borrowed crown. You stare at your reflection in polished metal, roses woven into your hair, petals already wilting from the heat and nerves. The gown is too tight. The crown's rim presses against your temples, as if testing to see if your skull is worthy. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. Always love seeing how many of you are drifting off across time zones. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You inhale, slowly. The scent is wax and wilted flowers, an odd blend of celebration and fatigue. Down the corridor, the great doors are flung open, but nobody asks if you're ready. The pageantry sweeps you forward, velvet slippers that chafe, silk gloves that itch, jewels that dig into your collarbones, and a steady drone of voices chanting prayers in Latin. The chill is everywhere, not just in your bones, but in the stiff posture of the courtiers, the unreadable faces of the priests, the practiced smiles of the nobility. It's your coronation, but you're the most trapped person in the room. This is what they don't show in paintings, your stomach churning so violently you're convinced everyone can hear it. The bishop's hands shake as he lowers the crown, perhaps wondering if it will fit, perhaps hoping you don't faint. Your mother stands with her lips pinched tight. Don't ruin this, her eyes warn. You probably won't survive this if you do. In this moment, every sense is alive, hyper-attuned to threat and tradition. The crown is a band of gold, solid, heavy, not meant for comfort but control. The pearls strung across your forehead feel more like beads of sweat. The roses, emblems of beauty, purity and love, are also reminders of how easily beauty can bruise. One wrong move and a thorn pricks your scalp. Try not to wince. You learn quickly that queens are not born, they're manufactured. The court's gaze moulds you, presses you into something useful. Every compliment is a test, every curtsy a calculation. You don't get to stumble or ask silly questions. Already you sense how narrow your freedom has become. You're a girl with a crown, but also with shackles hidden beneath velvet. Outside, the peasants crowd together, craning for a glimpse. They will gossip about how pale you looked, or how your smile never reached your eyes. Someone will say you seem to float above the rest. No one will mention the two maids clutching your elbows beneath your skirts, keeping you upright when your knees trembled. You process down the aisle, and the marble floor is cold, so cold it numbs your toes right through your shoes. You try to focus on a single stone, something solid to keep your mind from flying apart. The noble's jewels glitter back at you, 1,000 pinpricks of judgment and envy. Somewhere a child coughs, echoing in the cavernous space. The music swells, but it's discordant, a clamour that fills the air with expectation and dread. You know, even before the vows, that this is not your story. It's the kingdom's. Your value is measured in heirs and alliances, in your ability to sit still and endure. You're not allowed to fidget, not allowed to show how the gold itches, not allowed to grimace when the old baron's hand lingers too long in congratulation. Historians still argue whether medieval queens found power in these moments. Did they manipulate from behind veils and fans, or were they just beautifully dressed prisoners? Maybe both, maybe neither. The records are written by men with more interest in wars than in the colour of your bruises. Your new husband, already more king than man, whispers something in your ear, his breath warm, words lost in the clamour. Later, you will learn to decipher his silences more than his speeches. Today, you just nod and hope you look grateful enough. The truth: you're overwhelmed, tired, and hungry. Queens don't eat before the ceremony, in case the tightness of their gowns leads to fainting, or, heaven forbid, vomiting on the altar. The festivities stretch for hours. Toasts are made, the crowd roars, and wine flows freely. You sip, always aware of the stories, how a jealous cousin, a spurned lover, or a nervous rival might slip something into your goblet. You drink anyway, because refusing would look suspicious. Your new husband laughs loudly, slaps backs, and you nod along, learning the first rule of queenship: show interest, feign amusement, never let them see you count the exits. A servant girl, about your age, maybe younger, kneels at your side adjusting your train. She meets your eyes for a split second, her gaze darting away before anyone notices. You see your past self in her, nervous, tired, desperate to please. You wonder if she envies you, or pities you, maybe both, maybe neither. The ritual ends eventually. The crowd dissipates, the roses in your hair are wilted, your scalp throbs, your feet ache, and your smile is a muscle you barely recognise. You are a queen now, crowned, congratulated, and caged. Your new chambers are vast, echoing, and cold. The tapestries can't keep the wind out, and the bed is so large it feels like sleeping in a shipwreck. You sit on its edge, fingers tracing the embroidery, and you realise no one taught you how to feel at home in a place designed for spectacle, not comfort. You are alone, except for the ghosts of all the queens who sat here before, their dreams pressed flat by centuries of duty. One mainstream historical fact: medieval coronations were public spectacles, designed not only to sanctify the ruler, but to impress and intimidate the populace. Crowds often gathered for days of feasting and spectacle, while the actual queen's wishes or health were rarely considered. And for a quirky tidbit, some queens, facing endless ceremonies and public scrutiny, took to tucking tiny notes or keepsakes into the linings of their gowns, secret tokens to remind themselves who they were beneath the titles. A locket, a prayer, a scrap of childhood embroidery, tiny armours no one could see. The thing is, you never really take the crown off. Even in private, its weight lingers. You walk differently, you sleep lightly, and you never eat the first bite at banquets. The only time you might almost forget is late at night, when the wind howls outside the castle and you count heartbeats in the silence. Still, the crown is always there, an invisible bruise. Historians still argue whether medieval queens were truly powerless, or if they shaped kingdoms from behind the scenes. How much is myth? How much is the wishful thinking of later storytellers, hungry for heroines? You lie back finally on the oversized bed, staring at the canopy that feels a mile away. You close your eyes, and tomorrow's duties creep in. The audiences, the alliances, the ever-watchful eyes. There's no such thing as an off day for a queen. Even your dreams are watched, whispered about, dissected by those hoping for a crack in your mask. But tonight, just for a moment, you listen to the wind, and you let yourself be soft. The roses in your hair are gone, the crown sits heavy on the table, and you are simply a woman. Bone-tired, half-hopeful, pressed flat beneath the velvet weight of history. Morning doesn't begin gently for you. There's no sunrise serenade, no chorus of birds, just the cold, an ache that seeps up from the flagstones, invading your dreams until you wake with a shudder. The air in your chamber is so crisp that even your breath emerges as a small, nervous ghost, vanishing before you can see where it goes. You open your eyes to an unfamiliar ceiling, beams of ancient oak arching overhead like ribs inside the belly of a slumbering beast. The castle is silent at this hour, but not peaceful. A draught slides beneath the door, carrying the distant echo of boots, and a faint metallic tang. Iron, maybe. Or the lingering memory of last night's ceremonial swords. Your bed is enormous, but somehow there's never enough blanket. Your feet poke out and freeze. The nightdress, made for modesty rather than warmth, does little against the icy air. You shiver, curling tighter, and listen to the world beyond these thick walls. A bell rings somewhere. Deep, mournful, no nonsense about it. Servants shuffle through corridors carrying wood and water, always whispering, always glancing over their shoulders. You realise that every day as queen begins in this hush, where no one dares wake you, but everyone waits for you to move. You're both the sun and the storm, the signal for everything else to start. Rolling out of bed is a ritual in itself. The floor bites your bare soles and you hiss quietly. Your ladies-in-waiting arrive, arms full of woolen gowns, petticoats, and a woolen wrap so scratchy you wonder if it was spun from the memories of angry sheep. They curtsy, eyes lowered, but you catch glimpses of their curiosity. Do you sleep with the crown on? Do you dream of being somewhere else? Are queens even allowed to snore? No time to linger. You're expected at prayers. You pad to the wash basin where water sits in a copper jug, icy and still, waiting to sting your face awake. You splash it on, teeth clenching, and blink at your reflection in the small warped mirror. This version of you, hair tangled, eyes puffy, lips pale, will never make the tapestries. This is the secret face of a queen, known only to herself and perhaps a single, fiercely loyal maid. You mutter, thanks to her, and she flashes the ghost of a smile before disappearing behind your gowns. Layers are the order of the day. Wool first, then linen, then a velvet overdress heavy enough to anchor a ship. The sleeves are so long you could probably smuggle a ferret up each one. A girdle belt, a delicate necklace, then the signet ring. An official, uncomfortable reminder that everything you touch now leaves an impression. The castle's corridors stretch before you, dark and narrow, lined with faded tapestries depicting saints, battles, and queens far more serene than you feel. You move through them, trailing a faint scent of lavender, footsteps muffled by thick rushes strewn across the floor to mask the cold and the sometimes less than royal odours of castle life. You wonder if these rushes were replaced for your arrival, or if you're just stepping on history, layer after layer of straw and secrets. Breakfast is both a formality and a game. The high table is set, silver gleaming in the dim light, but you never get to eat first. Instead, you sit and watch as a servant, your official taster, samples the bread, the cheese, the dried fruit, and especially the wine. His face is unreadable. You hope he ate nothing suspicious yesterday. You remember the stories told to nervous girls, poisonings disguised as indigestion, rivals paid in gold to deliver a cup of honeyed death. You've never met a queen who trusted her food. A mainstream fact for your morning, even in royal households, medieval food was heavily salted and spiced, partly to disguise the flavour of less than fresh ingredients. You chew politely on bread that could double as a weapon, sip lukewarm ale, and try to look regal while wishing for something as simple as a hot cup of tea. Something that won't exist here for another few centuries. Your meal is interrupted, predictably, by a messenger, nervous, red-faced, clutching a scroll tied with a crimson ribbon. You recognise the colour. Messages from your husband's advisors are always red. The news is mundane. A shipment of wool delayed, a visiting lord arriving sooner than expected, a dispute among the washerwomen over soap rations. You nod, responding in careful, measured tones. Everyone here listens for the Queen's moods, searching for weakness or approval in every syllable. Outside your window, the courtyard stirs to life. Carts rattle across cobblestones. Stable boys chase runaway chickens. A scullery maid scolds a dog for stealing a crust of bread. You take a moment to watch it all, pressing your forehead to the glass, wavy and imperfect, but the closest you'll come to feeling the outside world on your skin today. As you leave the great hall, a young page follows with your cloak. So long the hem whispers secrets to the floor. You head toward the chapel, a chill echoing in the stones. Morning prayers are both obligation and performance. You kneel on a hard wooden bench, bones aching, while the priest drones on in Latin. You mouth the responses, pretending to understand every word, but your mind drifts. You count candle flames. You plan your answers for the day's meetings. You wonder how many queens knelt here before you, their knees bruised, their faith as thin as the dawn light creeping through stained glass. A quirky tidbit: medieval castles were often so cold that queens and noblewomen sometimes kept small dogs, known as sleeve dogs, hidden inside their voluminous sleeves or lap muffs, serving both as pets and tiny wriggling hand warmers. You imagine one now, a fluffy bundle tucked into your sleeve, offering a secret comfort no one else can see. After prayers, you're expected in the solar, a sunlit room, at least by castle standards, where business begins. Your day is a parade of visitors. The steward bows low, reciting lists of household accounts. The master of the hunt seeks your blessing for the day's chase. A distant cousin delivers greetings from a neighbouring kingdom, and you have to remember if her father is the one with the gout or the one who tried to poison your aunt. You smile, nod, and file away every detail. Queens never forget names or faces. Every greeting is a future favour owed, every smile a promise stored for a rainy day. Historians still argue whether medieval queens enjoyed these roles or merely endured them. Were you a natural hostess, thriving on the politics of hospitality, or were you a caged bird forced to sing on command? Letters from some queens survive, hinting at both pride and resentment. Perhaps both could be true. Perhaps some days you relish the chance to steer the conversation, to sow gossip, to influence without appearing to command. Other days it's just noise and faces and the ache in your jaw from too much smiling. You steal a few quiet moments in your private chamber, a pocket of peace padded with cushions and tapestries. Here, away from eyes and ears, you can breathe. You loosen your girdle, kick off your slippers, and curl up in the window seat. The view is limited. A walled garden, bare branches trembling in the wind, the silhouette of a distant forest where legends hide. Sometimes you wish you could run there, just for a day, just to remember what it feels like to choose your own direction. But your respite is short-lived. Duty always finds you. A nursemaid brings word of a village woman in need of charity, a child sick, a roof collapsed. You sign a writ for alms, your seal pressing wax into permanence. Another guest arrives bearing a gift, a painted box from Venice, so ornate it almost makes you laugh. You thank her, knowing you'll never be able to use it for anything except hiding letters, maybe, or small secrets. You return to your duties, drifting through the rest of the morning in a haze of obligation and distraction. The castle pulses with its own rhythm. Bells ring, horses stamp, fires crackle. Someone laughs 2 rooms away. You feel like a ghost wandering through your own life, visible only in glimpses, important yet untouchable. By midday, the chill has crept from your bones into your very thoughts. You feel the weight of the crown, even though it sits on a velvet cushion across the room, and the memory of all those eyes watching you, measuring, judging, comparing, lingers like a bruise beneath your skin. You remember a story whispered by one of your maids, the tale of a long-dead queen who, desperate for warmth, lined her bed with live coals hidden beneath iron sheets, only to burn a perfect pattern into the mattress. Supposedly, you can still see the marks if you lift the blankets in the right light. The maid swore it was true, but you suspect it's just another ghost story, the kind told to girls who need to believe in secrets and warnings. Yet, as you wrap yourself tighter in your shawl and gaze at the wan winter sunlight, you can almost smell the scorched wool, can almost hear the long-dead queen's laughter, equal parts sorrow and defiance, echoing down the corridors of time. By afternoon you're summoned again, a meeting with the Chancellor who drones on about taxes and treaties while you practice looking interested. Your mind drifts. Did you remember to thank the cook for the honey cakes? Did you send condolences to your cousin for her lost hawk? These are the tasks that keep the kingdom running, or so you're told. Sometimes you think it's just a way to keep you busy, to distract you from what you're truly capable of. A final tidbit for the day. Queens were often expected to act as mediators in family disputes, both within the court and among the wider nobility. Your role as peacemaker is as much a part of your crown as the jewels themselves. Sometimes, you wish you could simply pick sides, raise your voice, break a dish or two. But queens don't rage, they soothe, they compromise. They fold their anger into neat, silent packages and tuck them away for later. As the sky darkens and torches are lit, you retreat once more to your chambers. The cold is a living thing now, curling up with you, refusing to be banished. You climb into bed, pulling blankets high, and close your eyes, hoping for warmth, for sleep, for something softer than duty. You drift, halfway between dreams and memories, half queen, half girl, wondering if tomorrow will be any warmer, any kinder. Outside, the wind howls through the stone corridors, and you think, just for a moment, that maybe you're not alone after all. You don't get to wake up slowly. Before dawn even hints at the window, your chamber is a flurry of activity. Maids with buckets of cold water, ladies in waiting whispering about hems and hairpins, a nursemaid humming tunelessly as she lays out yet another suffocatingly elaborate dress. And you, the queen, are the silent storm centre, the reason everyone is moving so quickly and quietly, desperate not to be the first to annoy you before breakfast. The air smells of lavender and tallow, as you sit stiffly for your hair to be brushed, 100 strokes just like your mother taught you, and twice as many yanks. You try to remember a time when you could just let your hair snarl and fall wherever it pleased. Not anymore. Now every strand is a treaty, every curl a promise. They twist your hair into a braided crown and begin the daily ritual of adding ribbons, pins, and an almost comical display of jewelled combs. A gentle touch here, a jab of a pin there. You're half worried your scalp will bleed, but you know better than to flinch. Pain is just another requirement of the job. When you look in the mirror, it's not really you anymore. It's a face built for a dozen different courts. Painted cheeks, eyebrows darkened with soot and spit, lips coloured with crushed berries. You're beautiful, yes, but the beauty is borrowed, constructed. As the finishing touch, your ladies clasp a delicate golden veil to the back of your head. It's supposed to make you look angelic. You suspect it just makes you look smaller. As you're escorted down the draughty hall, the mainstream historical fact of the morning is that queens were expected to maintain a standard of beauty at all times, not out of vanity, but to represent the health and prestige of the kingdom. Diplomats sized up your cheekbones before your politics. You are the living face of a treaty, a walking, talking alliance. Today, your reflection is as much political armour as your husband's chainmail. Sometimes you wonder how much control you really have. There are days when the entire court seems to pivot around your smile, a flash of teeth, a gentle laugh at the right moment, and suddenly a dozen knights are arguing about the colour of your gown instead of the latest border skirmish. There's a strange power in knowing your laughter can stop a quarrel, or your silence can start one. But historians still argue whether queens like you truly wielded influence this way. Was beauty an active weapon, something you learned to sharpen? Or was it just another chain, another way to ensure you performed exactly as expected? Some chronicles claim the legendary Eleanor of Aquitaine could cow a roomful of bishops with a single eyebrow. Others suggest she simply learned the art of looking away at the right time, letting men mistake her restraint for wisdom. Today, you'll need every ounce of poise. There's a feast planned, a visiting delegation from a rival court. Your ladies are fussing with a locket, claiming it's a good luck charm, but you know better. It's a silent message. Gifts like these are weighed and measured. A locket from the French queen? Maybe she hopes you'll remember her next time you have the king's ear. You steel yourself and enter the great hall. It's brighter now, banners fluttering in the weak light, and everyone stands as you pass. Every glance is a question. Will you favour the northern lords or the southern? Will you address the envoy in French or show off your Latin? A quirky tidbit. To maintain their looks, some queens relied on homemade beauty secrets that would terrify a modern dermatologist. Egg white for smoother skin, crushed pearls for whitening, vinegar washes, and even raw meat poultices were popular remedies. You remember the smell of vinegar clinging to your mother's hands, and the way your grandmother used to rub her face with a linen rag soaked in milk, swearing it kept away the wrinkles, and incidentally most of the castle's dogs. During the meal, you are a portrait come to life. You don't eat first, you don't eat much at all. Your job is to be watched, admired, and maybe, if you're lucky, envied. The men discuss trade, but every so often someone tries to draw you in. They'll compliment your French, praise your embroidery, ask after the roses in your private garden. You answer carefully, threading diplomacy through every word. Compliments are weapons, and you know how to parry. The king leans over, his voice soft for your ears only. "Smile," he whispers, and you do, because everyone is watching. Your cheeks ache, but you keep smiling, even when the northern lord makes a joke at your expense and the table roars with laughter. You laugh too, because a queen who sulks can topple a treaty. But there's more happening beneath the surface. A sideways glance from a rival lady, a cryptic comment from a bishop. You make a note to yourself to question your maid about what's being whispered in the kitchens. In this world, information is more precious than sapphires. After the feast, you retreat to your solar with a headache, half from the wine, half from the effort of holding your face in one position for so long. You let your ladies unpin your hair and sigh as the tightness releases. The locket is warm from your skin. You turn it over and over in your hands, wondering what secrets it's meant to contain. There's a knock. The young scribe with shaking hands presents you with a stack of letters, correspondence from your mother, your cousin, and a mysterious note unsigned. The letters are full of coded phrases, nothing direct. Every word is weighed, every line a puzzle. You write a careful reply, burning the drafts you don't like in the little brazier by your desk. Later, in the quiet of your private chamber, you take off the last traces of your public face. The rouge comes off on a cloth, the pins are set aside, and you stare at yourself in a hand mirror, searching for the girl you used to be. Historians still argue whether queens like you found ways to use beauty and courtly rituals as tools for survival, or if they simply endured, day after day, the dull ache of never being able to let down their guard. The window is open, just a crack. A breeze tugs at your hair, lifting a strand, almost playful. You remember how you once dreamed of castles, of silk and song and roses. Now, you know that the price of every rose is another thorn, another pin, another long day of playing the world's most exhausting game. You sigh and set aside the mirror. You have survived another day, your beauty intact, your secret safe, at least for now. It starts as a cramp, a slight insistent twist low in your belly that makes you pause mid-step, fingers tightening on the carved wooden arm of your chair. You hide the discomfort with a careful smile, dismiss your ladies for a moment, and stand in the centre of your chambers, breathing shallowly, eyes fixed on the shuttered window. It's coming. The part of queenship no tapestry or legend ever bothered to show. Childbirth, as much a battle as any fought on muddy fields, but waged in silence behind closed doors by a woman whose body has become national property. There are no soft voices now, no gentle reassurance from your mother, who is a kingdom away and, truth be told, wouldn't be allowed here anyway. Only the midwife, old as the stones themselves, whose hands are calloused from decades of catching noble infants and burying noble secrets. She gives you a look that says, breathe through it. You are not the first, and you will not be the last. The priest lingers outside, his murmured prayers seeping beneath the door, as if holy words might ease the pain or keep the spirits at bay. A mainstream historical fact. Medieval queens were expected to produce heirs, ideally sons, and the pressure was immense. Your very worth weighed and measured in swaddling cloth and the cries of healthy babies. Some queens delivered a dozen children, each one a desperate insurance policy for the dynasty, but many more faced heartbreak and loss behind the curtain of royal myth. You remember too the darker stories, queens who laboured for days, their screams muffled by thick tapestries, while the court anxiously waited for news. Sometimes the bells tolled with joy, other times silence lasted far too long. In this moment, you become acutely aware of the fine line between celebration and catastrophe. Your husband, the king, is nowhere to be found. He has retreated to his favourite hunting lodge so as not to disturb you. You suspect he is more afraid of your pain than you are. Men of his station prefer battles they can win with swords and banners, not blood and breath and fear. They leave the real wars to the women. The midwife brings you broth in a cracked earthenware mug, urging you to drink. The taste is earthy, sharp with herbs meant to strengthen you, though you suspect they're mostly for show. The real medicine is in the old woman's hands and the way she speaks, direct, unafraid, seeing straight through your crown and your nerves to the young woman underneath. It hurts, yes. Scream if you must. They'll say prayers and light candles, but it's your body that'll see you through. The pain intensifies, rolling in like thunder. You grip the edge of the bed, linen twisting in your fists, and try to remember the stories of saintly queens who bore their suffering in silence. Maybe you could be one of them. If only the room would stop spinning, if only the world would shrink to something you could manage. Instead, it grows. The pain, the heat, the suffocating press of expectation. A quirky tidbit. In some royal births, the room was filled with so many witnesses, noblewomen, courtiers, even visiting dignitaries, that the queen herself could barely breathe for the press of bodies, all desperate to be the first to claim they'd seen the heir's first cry. Some queens, mortified, begged for privacy and were denied. Others fainted, revived with vinegar or rosewater, their dignity a small price to pay for an uninterrupted view of the future. You want to scream, you want to run, but there is nowhere to go. The walls are stone, unyielding, and you are bound by more than just protocol. You close your eyes, let the pain roll over you, and somewhere in the haze you feel the weight of every woman who came before. You wonder what they would say if they could see you now, sweat beading on your brow, tears pricking at your eyes. Historians still argue whether queens truly suffered more than their subjects, or if their gilded cages offered any comfort at all. Some say the best physicians were always on hand, that no expense was spared for royal mothers. Others point to the many gravestones marked by nothing but a name and a date. Gone in childbirth, the queen's legacy cut short. You gasp as another wave hits, vision swimming. The priest's prayers grow louder outside the door. The midwife murmurs encouragement, wiping your brow with a rough linen cloth, her voice the only anchor in this sea of agony. For a moment, you forget you are queen. You are only a body, breaking, mending, creating life at a cost that no one else will ever truly know. Hours pass, or maybe it's only minutes. Time slips sideways in this room, bending to the rhythm of your pain. The world outside continues, bells ringing, horses stamping, courtiers gossiping about your progress. None of them will ever see you like this, undone, raw, magnificent and powerless all at once. The midwife gives a sharp command and suddenly there is action. Women bustle around the bed, fetching water, heating towels, whispering encouragements and ancient charms. You grip the sheets, legs trembling, and push, because there is no other choice. The pain crests, a wave you think will surely sweep you away, and then mercifully the room fills with a new sound, a baby's cry, insistent, furious, alive. You collapse back onto the pillows, tears sliding down your cheeks, relief, exhaustion, triumph. Someone wraps the child and lays it beside you, whispering, "A boy." The news will sweep through the castle like wildfire, setting off days of celebration, feasting, and, most importantly, security. For now, you are safe, but you know better than to relax. The midwife inspects the baby, murmuring approval, and hands him off to the nurse. You're already thinking of the next heir, the next time, the cycle that never seems to end. The priest is allowed in, face solemn as he offers prayers of thanks. He blesses the child, sprinkles water on his forehead, and for a moment you almost feel hope, until you remember how many small graves lie behind the chapel, a fact they never teach in school. Many medieval queens bore children who didn't survive infancy. Disease, infection, accidents, or the simple frailty of life meant that every birth was shadowed by the possibility of loss, yet each time you're expected to smile, to present your child to the court as if nothing could ever go wrong. Later, as the room empties and you're finally alone, you stare at the small, perfect face beside you. His breath is steady, his fist curled tight around your finger. You whisper a promise you know you can't keep, to keep him safe, to always be near, to protect him from the world that already wants so much from him. A quirky tidbit. In some royal courts, it was considered unlucky for a newborn to be weighed or named too soon, for fear that death might take notice. Instead, your son will be called the child or the babe until a formal naming ceremony, days or even weeks later. Until then, everyone tiptoes, hoping that the gods or fate or bad luck won't look this way. You drift into a half-sleep, pain receding, mind swimming with exhaustion and half-formed prayers. Even here, in the quiet aftermath, you're never quite alone. A nursemaid sits in the corner, dozing lightly, ready to fetch water or call the doctor at a moment's notice. Outside, the priest's voice is replaced by the soft clink of glasses and laughter. Already the castle is celebrating, the queen suffering forgotten in the glow of new life. Historians still argue whether the birth chamber was a site of female power or ultimate vulnerability. Was it a private sanctuary where women could speak openly, or a stage for royal propaganda? Some say queens found strength in these moments, forming bonds with their attendants and mothers-in-law. Others say it was just another ordeal, survived in isolation, with every word and cry carried back to the waiting world. As dawn breaks, you watch the light creep across the stone floor, touching the tiny bundle beside you. For a moment, there is peace. You made it. The kingdom is safe, for now. The cost is yours alone, a secret pain tucked deep behind your practiced smile. You know you will rise again soon, accept the court's congratulations, and begin the cycle anew. But for this moment, you are simply a mother. Flesh and blood, heart thudding in time with the new life beside you. You close your eyes, pressing your lips to your child's soft hair, and promise, again, quietly, fiercely, to endure, to survive, to outlast the pain and the shadows and the endless watchful eyes. You're queen, yes, but more than that, you are alive. You wake before anyone else. The sky outside is still a bruised violet, shadows heavy on the cold flagstones. Your body is battered, hips aching, belly sore, every muscle echoing the memory of the night's labour. The midwife has gone, but the nursemaid is curled in a wooden chair near the hearth, snoring softly, her cap slipped sideways. The baby is in his cradle, swaddled so tightly he looks less like an heir and more like a bundle of laundry waiting for the wash. You allow yourself a moment to simply exist, to breathe, to take in the hush, to marvel at the silent persistence of life. For a few minutes, you're not queen or consort or even mother, just a woman, blinking into the watery pre-dawn light, grateful for silence and the unfamiliar absence of pain. But the world doesn't pause for your recovery. There's no such thing as maternity leave in your castle. You're expected to rise, to dress, to look radiant and grateful. The court will gather for the official announcement, and every face will turn to yours, hunting for weakness, for signs that you've faltered. You know the dance by heart. Your ladies-in-waiting arrive quietly, trying not to disturb the child. They bring with them a riot of silks and soft linen, your postpartum wardrobe, chosen to hide the reality of a body that survived another round with fate. As they fuss over your hair and pin a string of pearls beneath your chin, you stare at your reflection and think about all the invisible bruises that jewels can't conceal. The mainstream historical fact. For queens, childbirth was as public as it was private. No sooner had you delivered than you were expected to appear at court, to show the court and the people that you were whole, unharmed, and able to produce an heir. Sometimes the queen would be carried to the chapel in a grand procession within days, regardless of whether she could walk unaided. The entire spectacle was as much about reassuring the kingdom as celebrating the birth. Breakfast is a stilted affair. Your appetite is gone, replaced by nerves and a low buzz of exhaustion. You pick at a heel of bread, sip weak wine, and practice the tight, polite smile that will see you through the day. Down the table, a pair of minor lords argue over hawking rights. A cousin you barely know leans over, whispering that your cheeks are still too pale. You nod, unwilling to waste breath on lies. There is a relentless rhythm to it. The repeated congratulations, the hopeful inquiries about the child's health, the careful compliments that are really veiled warnings. You recognize the dance, the way every guest tries to gauge how soon you'll be expected to produce a spare heir. You smile, demure, your hands folded carefully in your lap, and remind yourself that the strongest armour in this world is a face that never cracks. After breakfast, the baby is brought in by his nurse, bundled up tight and squirming with all the strength of a kitten. Everyone wants to see him. The men peer over each other's shoulders, comparing noses and chins, speculating about which ancestor he most resembles. The women ask to hold him, passing him from one perfumed bosom to another, all while shooting you looks of envy, pity, or calculation, depending on their own fortunes. A quirky tidbit. It was common in some medieval courts for noblewomen to whisper good luck charms or quiet curses over newborns, believing the right words could sway fate. You watch as an elderly aunt traces a protective sign on your son's forehead, then slips a silver coin into his swaddling. Later, a maid tucks a sprig of rosemary under the cradle mattress, to ward off night terrors and nosy fairies. The formal blessing takes place at noon. You're led into the chapel, your feet dragging despite your best efforts. The baby, now the official heir, is presented to the priest and then to the court. The king beams, proud as a peacock, his hand heavy on your shoulder. He barely glances at you, all his attention on the swaddled bundle. You stand as straight as you can, ignoring the ache in your back, and listen to the litany of prayers and the endless echoing amens. The chapel is chilly. Candles flicker. Somewhere in the back, a cluster of servants exchange knowing glances. You wonder what they're saying about you, about the queen who survived, the queen who didn't cry out, the queen who delivered a living son. Your face gives nothing away. As the blessing concludes, the bells ring out, summoning the entire household for a feast. You're paraded through the hall, every inch a royal figure, though inside you feel like a fragile shell, one hard knock away from shattering. The feast is a blur. Roasted meats, river fish, sugared almonds, the inevitable turnip pie. You nibble, smile, listen. Everyone expects you to be gracious, serene, untouchable. You give them what they want, even as your thoughts drift to the tiny sleeping child in his cradle and to the years ahead. Historians still argue whether queens in this era found solace in the ceremonial aspects of motherhood, or if it was simply another form of performance, another mask to wear. Some letters suggest genuine pride and joy, while others hint at deep loneliness and resentment, especially when surrounded by people who would never understand the cost. After the feast, you're finally permitted to return to your rooms. The nursemaid awaits with the baby, who fusses, red-faced and indignant. You settle into a chair by the window, rocking him, humming old tunes you barely remember from your own childhood. The castle outside bustles with celebration, but your chamber is quiet, safe. Here at least you can let your guard down, if only for a few precious moments. You speak softly to your son, telling him secrets he won't remember. The feel of the wind through the orchard in spring, the story of the fox who outwitted the hounds, the memory of a lullaby sung in a language no one at court speaks anymore. You wonder who he will become, if he'll ever know you as more than a distant gilded figure in his childhood memories. The afternoon drifts by in a haze of exhaustion. You nap in your chair, waking only when the nurse comes to fetch the baby for his bath. You watch the routine. Warm water, lavender-scented soap, the nurse's gentle hands. The baby howls, then quiets, eyes wide and solemn as he is wrapped in linen and placed back in his cradle. You envy him his simplicity, his ability to wail without consequence. A quirky tidbit. Some castles kept wet nurses on staff, women whose only job was to feed the royal children. Wet nurses sometimes wielded surprising influence, becoming confidants to the queen, or even whispering advice into the ears of future kings. It was said that a wise queen kept her wet nurse close, and her child closer. Evening comes and the castle's energy shifts. The torches are lit. The musicians tune their lutes. Courtiers change into fresh finery for the evening's entertainment. A play, a round of chess, the inevitable gossip and intrigue that fills the long hours between dusk and dawn. You're expected to attend, of course, but you find yourself longing for solitude, for the simple pleasure of quiet. You manage to beg off early, pleading exhaustion and the need to tend to the baby. Your husband barely notices, too busy laughing with the visiting dignitaries. Back in your chambers, the fire is warm, the bed piled high with furs and embroidered blankets. The nursemaid yawns, promising to keep watch, but you wave her away. Tonight, you want to be alone with your son. You cradle him, watch the rise and fall of his chest, the flutter of tiny eyelids. You wonder what he dreams about. The world outside his cradle is cold, complicated, crowded with hungry eyes and sharper knives. In here, at least for now, he is safe. Historians still argue whether the solitude of queens was a luxury or a curse. Some diaries suggest it was the only time a queen could truly think her own thoughts. Others say the loneliness was crushing, a silent weight that never quite lifted, no matter how many feasts or ceremonies filled the day. You stretch out on the bed, your child nestled beside you, and listen to the distant sounds of revelry, laughter, music, the soft shush of snow falling outside the window. You think of the women who came before you, each with their own stories, their own victories and sorrows. You wonder what they would say if they could see you now. A quirky tidbit. In some regions, it was believed that a mother's first kiss to her child could shape his destiny, whispering strength, wisdom, or kindness into the tiny soul. You kiss your son's brow just in case. You have no idea what the future holds for him, but you want it to be gentler than the world you inherited. Finally, the castle quiets. The last song fades, the candles burn low. You close your eyes, cradling your child, and let yourself drift into sleep. You dream of gardens in bloom, of soft voices, of laughter that doesn't hurt. Tomorrow the world will begin again. There will be duties, demands, endless rituals to perform. But for now, you are simply here, warm and alive, wrapped in the fragile peace of the night. Morning breaks grey and unhurried. The bells in the east tower toll softly, calling the chapel to life, though the sun can't quite pierce the fog clinging to the castle walls. You lie still for a moment, letting the sounds of the waking court filter through the thick glass, boots on stone, distant laughter, the faint rattle of carts in the courtyard. Your son, the kingdom's new hope, is still sleeping. His breath whistles in the cradle, his fist pressed stubbornly against his cheek. You slip out of bed as quietly as you can, shivering as your feet hit the cold rushes. There's a comfort in the routine, the washing, the layers of linen and wool, the soft clink of your signet ring against the ewer. Your ladies-in-waiting appear, already full of news and questions. One tugs at your hair, brushing out the sleep. Another fastens a brooch at your collar, the ancient family emblem gleaming against your breastbone. They speak in hushed tones, as if any loud sound might shatter the fragile quiet left from last night's storm of celebration. You listen with half an ear. There's talk of a dispute in the kitchens, a new consignment of honey, the scandal of a knight found snoring in the stables. It's the rhythm of the castle, gossip as currency, secrets traded as lightly as flour or salt. You've learned to pay attention. Every rumour can be a weapon, a warning, or a window into someone else's plans. Breakfast is subdued, the usual pageantry tinged with fatigue. The king is already at the table speaking with the steward about grain prices and the spring sowing. His face is flushed with victory and drink, his smile looser than usual. He holds the baby with the stiff discomfort of a man unused to tiny, fragile things. You watch him, half resentful and half amused, as he passes the child back to the nurse with relief, his focus shifting easily to the day's business. A mainstream historical fact. For many queens, meals were never truly private. Even in the early hours, there might be a dozen people at your table, official tasters, lords hoping for your favour, scribes noting every word. Every bite you took was a small act of theatre, a public proof of your place in the world. After breakfast, the real work begins. The first duty is a procession through the castle, part inspection, part performance. You move from hall to hall, greeting minor nobles, comforting a maid whose mother has died, blessing the kitchen boys with a smile. Everyone wants something from you, even if it's only a moment's acknowledgement. You move through it all with careful grace, never letting the fatigue show. Your child's safety, your reputation, your influence, everything depends on your ability to perform. You pass through the solar, where your ladies have arranged embroidery frames and baskets of coloured thread. You settle at the window, sunlight slanting across your lap, and join them. The conversation drifts easily. Weather, fashions, rumours from neighbouring kingdoms. Here, you can almost forget your rank. Almost. But even this space is not truly your own. Spies and gossips thrive in the warmth of the women's rooms, and every careless word could end up in the wrong ear by sunset. A quirky tidbit. The embroidery itself is more than pastime, it's silent diplomacy. Many queens stitched personal mottos, hidden love tokens, or even subtle political messages into the hems of cloaks and the edges of altar cloths. It's said that one queen famously embroidered her initials beside a tiny golden dagger, her way of warning a rival lady to mind her tongue. You work the needle absently, letting the rhythm calm your nerves. Your mind drifts to the letters you must answer, requests for patronage, pleas from distant relatives, invitations to yet more ceremonies. Each one is a delicate negotiation. Too generous, and you're accused of favouritism. Too cold, and you gain a reputation for cruelty. You've learned to weigh your words as carefully as any coin. The morning slips away. A page arrives with the summons. The king wants to see you. Your stomach clenches, a reflex you haven't outgrown no matter how many times this happens. You smooth your skirts and follow the boy through the maze of halls. The king's chambers are bright, the fire roaring, the air thick with the scent of spiced wine and burning oak. He greets you warmly, his mood expansive after the birth of his heir, but underneath you sense the calculation. He talks of alliances, of the necessity for another son, of the delicate dance of European politics. You nod, offer opinions where it's safe, never forgetting that your words can be remembered, or twisted by anyone listening. Historians still argue whether medieval queens wielded real political influence or simply acted as figureheads. There are letters from queens who counselled their husbands, who shaped treaties and settled disputes, but there are just as many stories of women ignored, their advice set aside for the opinions of bolder men. The king grows distracted. He hands you a letter from a foreign ambassador asking your opinion. You read it, fingers tracing the neat foreign script, searching for hidden meaning. It's a polite request for a royal marriage, a niece, a cousin, a pawn in a much larger game. You answer diplomatically, careful to sound enthusiastic but not eager. The king smiles, satisfied. He doesn't see the tightness in your jaw or the way your fingers clench in your lap. Afterwards, you slip away to the chapel, the quiet sanctuary of your days. The stained glass glows with late morning sun. You kneel on the cold stone whispering prayers, not just for your child, but for wisdom, for patience, for the strength to survive another day. Your faith is practical, a cloak to keep you warm against the world's chill. You wonder if the saints ever felt as tired as you do now. A quirky tidbit. Some queens, frustrated by the endless demands, secretly scribbled prayers or curses onto scraps of parchment and tucked them into cracks in the chapel walls. There are places in this castle where the stones are filled with hidden hopes and desperate wishes, layer upon layer of silent stories. The afternoon is claimed by the business of the court. You attend meetings, arbitrate disputes, and listen to endless reports from stewards and bailiffs. The words blur together: grain shortages, tax disputes, the endless complaints of petty nobles. You are expected to listen, to smile, to offer comfort or reprimand as needed. It is exhausting work, but also the closest thing you have to power. A kind word can change a life. A careless rebuke can ruin one. Sometimes you remember the girl you were before the crown, a girl who thought the world would bend to her will. Now you know better. The world is an avalanche and you're simply digging out tunnels and hoping the roof holds. By evening the court gathers again for supper. This meal is less formal, the air buzzing with the stories and small scandals of the day. The king is in high spirits, the baby is paraded once more, and you are surrounded by laughter and music. Yet even here, you feel the distance, the space between what is expected and what is real. You excuse yourself as soon as you can, retreating to the quiet of your chambers. The baby is fussy tonight, his cries echoing in the stone room. You rock him gently, humming a lullaby your mother taught you. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the shutters. You pull your son close, whispering promises you're not sure you can keep. Historians still argue whether the queens of old ever found real peace. Some found solace in gardens, in prayer, in friendships with clever ladies and trusted servants. Others simply endured, night after night, waiting for the world to change. You set your son down at last, watching him sleep. His breath is soft, his face peaceful. For a moment, the world is quiet. You sit by the window, staring out at the moonlit courtyard, and let yourself hope, just for tonight, that tomorrow might be kinder. The castle settles into its winter hush, and you begin to notice the ways your world has changed. Subtle at first, then all-consuming. Motherhood, queenship, and the invisible chains of expectation tighten together like a woven braid. You can't remember the last time you moved freely, when your actions weren't measured, your words weighed, your very breath counted by others. Each day repeats itself with minor variations, but always the same core: duty, watchfulness, and the ever-present question, are you enough? It's barely light when you're woken by the sharp knock of the steward. The kingdom never rests, and neither do you. There's talk of a minor rebellion 2 counties away, a baron unhappy with the king's latest decree, his peasants whispering over weak ale and smoky hearths. The steward wants your advice, but mostly he wants your approval for what's already been decided. You listen, nod, ask a few pointed questions. Sometimes the smallest words you offer become seeds for someone else's solution. Other times you're simply another link in the chain of command. As you move through your morning routine, the sense of performance sharpens. The baby is fussing, your nursemaid pale with fatigue. The king is absent, already in council, and your ladies-in-waiting whisper behind hands, debating the best way to handle a rumour that the baker's wife has seen a bad omen in the flour. You sigh. Even omens are your business now. Breakfast is hurried. Salted fish, cold bread, a bite of apple you barely taste. A courtier brings news of a visiting envoy from the east, a sharp-eyed man known for his cunning. The kingdom is a stage, and you're both actress and audience. You practice your pleasant nods and your artful silences, rehearsing answers to questions you can never quite predict. A mainstream historical fact: medieval queens were often expected to receive foreign guests as part of their diplomatic duties. Sometimes, a queen's grace, wit, and beauty could do more to sway a negotiation than any battalion of soldiers. Your sitting room becomes a miniature court, heavy with incense, your presence itself a message of peace, or power, or warning. You prepare for the envoy's arrival as if preparing for battle. Your best gown, blue velvet stiff with embroidery, your mother's pearls, and a faint trace of rosewater at your wrists. The baby stays with his nurse. Children can be useful symbols, but today you need every advantage you can muster. The envoy arrives, flanked by 2 interpreters, and the air is thick with measured words. He bows deeply, a little too long, and offers a gift, a carved box inlaid with ivory filled with sweetmeats. You thank him, noting the pattern on the box, an Eastern motif, a subtle signal of friendship, or perhaps dominance. Conversation begins. Every word is a layer of meaning, every smile a signal. You ask after his journey, his family, his king. He praises your hospitality, your gardens, the court's wisdom. Historians still argue whether queens truly enjoyed these moments of soft power, or if they were merely extensions of their husbands' ambitions. Some chronicles record queens who charmed ambassadors, redirecting treaties with a single clever comment. Others hint at a lifetime spent as silent figureheads, their thoughts unrecorded and their influence invisible, except in the subtlest changes of fate. Today, you try to read the envoy's real intentions. Is he pleased? Is he disappointed? You flatter, you divert, you ask carefully pointed questions about trade, about border security, about his king's health. You watch his eyes, the twitch of his lips. Every answer is a thread you might pull later when the council asks for your impressions. The meeting ends with polite words and small gifts exchanged. As the envoy leaves, you allow yourself a deep breath. It's a relief to be alone, even for a moment, but the solitude is short-lived. A lady-in-waiting slips in, holding a bundle of letters tied with green ribbon. The colour tells you they're from your family or what's left of it. You take the letters to your private solar, a rare patch of quiet sunlight where you can sit undisturbed. The letters are newsy, filled with stories of distant cousins and failing harvests, of marriages and deaths you barely remember. There's a hint of longing in your sister's script. She envies you, she says, the fine clothes, the power. You almost laugh, but your eyes sting with tears, if only she knew. A quirky tidbit. Medieval correspondence among noblewomen was often written in secret codes or with elaborate metaphors. An innocuous comment about the health of a favourite hound could be a plea for help, or a veiled warning about plots at court. You reread your sister's note about her restless spaniel and wonder what's really troubling her. The afternoon passes in a blur of obligations. You oversee the preparations for tonight's feast, taste the wine, inspect the flowers. You check on your child, his cheeks flushed, his eyes bright. You answer questions from the cook, from the head gardener, from the master of the hunt. Everyone needs something: approval, reassurance, a whispered promise that things will be all right. As the sun sets, you slip away to the garden. The air is cold, but you crave the quiet, the earthy scent of dormant roses and frozen earth. The formal beds are empty now, the last of the summer colour long gone, but you find peace in the bare branches and the silence. You remember coming here as a bride, hopeful and naive, before you understood that queenship was a cage built of duty and watchfulness. A quirky tidbit. Some queens kept secret gardens, hidden within the castle walls, where they could meet trusted friends, plot quiet rebellions, or simply breathe. You wonder if the gardeners ever guessed at the secrets buried beneath the yews. Darkness falls quickly, and you return to your chambers to dress for the evening. The feast is grand. A reward for the envoy's visit, a show of plenty for a court hungry for reassurance. You take your seat at the king's right hand, smile at the right jokes, sip wine you suspect has already been tasted for you. The hall is loud, filled with music and the scent of roasted meats. You laugh, you nod, you press the king's arm when he needs it. A mainstream fact. For all their riches, medieval banquets were often as much about spectacle as substance. Dishes sculpted into elaborate shapes, musicians and jugglers providing distraction. The whole event a stage where alliances could be made or broken in a single careless moment. Tonight the king toasts you, his voice ringing over the hall. The court rises, shouting their approval. You smile, raise your goblet, let the moment pass over you like a wave. Later, when the guests are drunk and the music has soured, you slip away to your child's bedside. The nursery is quiet. The nursemaid is asleep, your son's small hand curled around her finger. You sit beside them, exhausted and bone-tired, and listen to the slow, steady breathing of the child the kingdom needs most. Historians still argue whether queens ever truly slept well. Some say the nightly rituals of prayer and song soothed them. Others say worry kept them from rest, haunted by fears of poison, betrayal, or the loss of a child to fever or fate. You close your eyes, offering silent prayers for peace, your child's, your kingdom's, your own. For a moment, the world is silent. You tuck the blankets closer around your son, wishing, as always, that love could be armour. Before bed you slip a folded letter beneath your pillow, a message for your sister, written in the code of childhood, full of wishes and warnings. You hope it finds her safe. You hope it finds you both. Tonight you allow yourself to dream, not of power, not of politics, but of a morning when the burdens are lighter, the rooms warmer, and the laughter real. You wake in darkness, startled by a distant shout, someone in the courtyard perhaps, or a dream that has chased you into morning. You listen, heart racing, but the castle soon returns to its usual hush. The echo of boots on stone, the faint creak of wood, the distant coo of doves nesting in the eaves. You roll over and catch a glimpse of your son, still sleeping in his cradle, lips puckered, arms splayed out in surrender to a world that does not yet ask him to perform. You envy him, just for a moment. The sheer freedom of being unobserved, unburdened, not yet aware of all that will one day be demanded from him. But even as the thought passes, you push yourself up from the tangled sheets, wrap a shawl around your shoulders, and begin the business of the day. Queens do not linger in bed. Your ladies-in-waiting arrive with their familiar bustle. There's the ritual of the wash basin. Cold water, a thin sliver of scented soap, the brisk rasp of a linen cloth against your cheeks. They help you dress, fastening layer after layer until you feel armoured in velvet and silk. You remember when you used to enjoy dressing up, but now each garment feels like a layer of expectation pressed against your skin. While you sit for your hair to be braided and pinned, your mind drifts. Today, you are meant to preside over the court, hear petitions, settle disputes, smile, and be gracious. It sounds simple, but you know better. Each petition is a plea, a negotiation, a test. If you are too soft, they'll say you're weak. Too hard, they'll call you cruel. The only rule is that there is no way to win, only ways to survive. A mainstream historical fact. Medieval queens often acted as the kingdom's final court of appeal for commoners, especially women and children. Your signature could commute a sentence, grant a pardon, or doom a petitioner to the stocks. For some, you are a last hope. For others, the face of the unyielding system. Your son stirs, whimpers, then drifts back to sleep. The nursemaid sits nearby, mending a torn bonnet. She glances at you, sympathy and respect mingling in her eyes. You think of all the women who serve you, their own lives shaped by the whims of men and fate. Sometimes you wish you could do more for them. Sometimes you do, quietly, behind closed doors, with gifts and whispered favours that go unrecorded in any royal ledger. Breakfast is a brief affair. Honeyed oats, dried plums, a slice of cheese hard enough to chip a tooth. You eat because you must, not because you hunger. The king is absent, busy with advisers and the endless business of war and peace. You are grateful in a way. His presence often means your own words must be chosen with double care. The first petitioner is an old woman, her hands twisted with age and hard labour. She falls to her knees, begging clemency for her grandson, a boy caught stealing a loaf of bread. The law says he must lose a hand, but you see the desperation in her eyes, the silent question. Do queens have hearts? You lean forward, ask the necessary questions, press for details. There are murmurs among your advisers, but you make your decision, commute the sentence, order the boy to serve in the kitchens instead. The old woman weeps, kissing your skirts. You help her up with your own hands, ignoring the looks from the watching men. They will talk, you know, but let them. A quirky tidbit. In some medieval courts, the Queen's mercy was seen as a sign of divine favour. Commoners left flowers and candles at the palace gates, hoping that a passing glance from the Queen would heal a sick child or ensure a good harvest. You remember seeing a little shrine outside the chapel, wildflowers tucked into a crack in the wall, and feeling the weight of all those silent prayers. The day wears on, the hall is crowded, nobles seeking favours, merchants complaining about taxes, a young widow asking for the return of her late husband's lands. You listen, answer, arbitrate. Each decision is a thread in a tapestry you're constantly weaving, patching, repairing. Your ladies-in-waiting stand behind you, learning how a queen survives in a world that only pretends to adore her. After the session ends, you slip away to your private chamber. The sun is bright through the window, illuminating dust motes in the air. You sink into a cushioned chair, exhausted, and allow yourself a few minutes to read, a rare indulgence. The book is a treatise on herbs and their uses, half myth, half medicine. You run your finger down the illustrations: yarrow for wounds, rosemary for memory, lavender for sleep. You wish you could fill the whole castle with lavender, chase away the restless dreams and anxious whispers that haunt your nights. There is a letter waiting for you on your writing table, sealed in red wax. The crest is familiar. Your father's kingdom, far away, yet ever present in the alliances and rivalries that shape your life. You break the seal and scan the words, careful not to betray any emotion to the servant who hovers nearby. The letter is filled with news and veiled warnings. Your younger sister is to be married to a much older lord. A distant cousin is rumoured to be plotting a claim to your father's throne. You sigh, fold the letter, and tuck it into your sleeve. You know what is expected of you. A gracious reply, advice for your sister, perhaps a small gift sent in your name. All of it will be weighed and measured by those who care more for power than for happiness. A mainstream historical fact: royal marriages were almost always political. A queen's sisters, daughters, and nieces were traded like rare birds, each alliance another knot in the vast web of European diplomacy. Your own marriage was decided when you were little more than a child, your future traded for a promise and a purse of gold. You spend the early afternoon with your son, holding him close, tracing the tiny curves of his face. You try to memorize every detail, knowing how quickly he will grow, how soon he will belong more to the kingdom than to you. You sing to him in the language of your childhood, words so soft and old that you're not sure you remember their meaning. Still, he quiets, eyes wide and solemn, as if he understands the secrets you're sharing. A quirky tidbit: some royal nurseries were said to be haunted by the ghosts of lost heirs, babies who died before their time, their spirits lingering to watch over the living children. Nurses whispered stories of midnight lullabies sung by invisible voices, of cold hands smoothing fevered brows. You sometimes think you feel a presence when you sit alone in the nursery at dusk, a shiver of sadness that isn't quite your own. Afternoon brings more duty. The king sends for you, a council session where your presence is required, but your opinions only cautiously welcomed. The discussion is tedious. Border disputes, the price of salt, rumours of rebellion. The men talk in circles, tempers flaring and fading. You wait for your moment, then speak, careful and clear. Sometimes they listen. More often, they nod and return to their debates. But every now and then your suggestion lingers, resurfacing later as the king's own idea. It's a small satisfaction, but it keeps you sane. Historians still argue whether queens were the true architects of some kingdom's greatest policies, working quietly behind the throne, or whether their influence was always just an illusion, a flattering story told to placate them. There are chronicles that name queens as the mothers of peace, or the wise counsellors, and others that barely mention their names except as footnotes to their husbands' achievements. The council finally ends, and you escape to the gardens for air. The day has grown bright, the last traces of winter melting from the stone paths. You walk alone, trailing your hand through the cold, fragrant air. In the herb garden, a robin perches on a branch watching you. For a moment you stand still, savouring the smallness of the scene. The bird, the green shoots poking through the soil, the freedom of being unnoticed. A quirky tidbit. Queens often communicated with their allies and confidants through gifts of herbs and flowers, each carrying a hidden meaning. A sprig of sage for wisdom, violets for loyalty, rue for regret. You once sent a bouquet of rosemary and rue to your mother, hoping she'd understand the message. I remember, and I wish things were different. Evening comes all too soon. There is another banquet, a visiting abbot, a celebration of a minor victory on the frontier, an excuse to parade your son and reinforce the illusion of harmony. You don your best gown, your heaviest jewels, and take your place beside the king. The hall is warm, crowded, filled with laughter and the clink of goblets. The baby is passed from arm to arm, his cheeks pinched, his hair admired. You watch him closely, worry prickling at the back of your mind. In this world, even a child's smile is a political tool. The feast blurs together. Roasted meats, honeyed cakes, musicians in the gallery. The king is in a generous mood, raising toasts, boasting of his strong son and wise queen. You smile when required, laugh when appropriate, and let your thoughts wander to your sister, to the mother you haven't seen in years, to the old woman whose grandson you saved that morning. As the night deepens, the revelry grows louder. The court's masks slip, and secrets tumble out between jokes and spilled wine. You catch snippets of gossip, a lord's new mistress, a bishop's gambling debts, a maid's secret engagement to a stable boy. You store it all away. Knowledge is your currency, after all. Historians still argue whether queens cultivated these networks of secrets deliberately, or whether it was simply a necessity, surviving in a world where information was more valuable than gold. Some queens are remembered as master manipulators, others as innocent bystanders in the great game of power. You wonder which they'll say you were when the songs are sung and the stories written. At last you're allowed to slip away, pleading weariness and the need to check on your child. In the nursery the nursemaid yawns, her eyes heavy with sleep. Your son stirs, blinking up at you. You take him in your arms, hold him close, breathe in the scent of milk and lavender. The world outside your door fades into shadow and song. Before bed you kneel at the window, whispering a prayer you're not sure you believe. You ask for peace, for wisdom, for a night without dreams. You tuck your son into his cradle, brush a kiss across his brow and settle into bed, letting the darkness enfold you. Tomorrow the cycle will begin again, petitions, banquets, secret letters, whispered threats. But for now you let yourself rest, drifting into a sleep as deep as stone, your son's breath a small comfort in the silent room. There's a time in the early morning when the castle feels almost gentle, a hush before the stirrings of ambition, intrigue and duty creep in. You wake to it, aware for just a moment of your own breathing, of the cool heaviness of your blanket, and of your son's small weight at your side. He's nestled close, warm and innocent, unaware that his every cry or giggle is the heartbeat of an entire kingdom's future. But the moment never lasts. Before the sun fully rises, the machinery of court life rattles back to life. The bell in the main tower tolls. Footsteps pass your door, servants fetching water, kitchen maids already at their fires, and the guards swapping stories about the night. Somewhere in the corridors, your ladies-in-waiting are preparing for your first appointment. Your body aches with tiredness that's never really gone, and the ghosts of worry crowd into your waking mind. You pull yourself upright, careful not to wake your son. The nursemaid, ever vigilant, appears almost instantly to lift him from your arms. She hums as she checks his blanket, then disappears to the next room where he'll be bathed, swaddled, and presented for the day's parade of admirers. You know her name, Edith, and you thank her quietly, knowing how much you rely on these silent women who shore up your life behind the scenes. Your own morning is a dance of layers and rituals, a hot cloth for your face to chase away the shadows beneath your eyes, the quiet knotting of your hair, pinned and braided, secured with your favourite silver comb. You watch yourself in the cloudy glass and wonder if you look older this week, or if it's just the weight of responsibility pressing new lines into your skin. The ladies pick your gown, a shade of pale blue you once loved, now faded by candlelight and the dullness of repetition. A mainstream historical fact. The appearance of queens was itself a political act. Everything from your dress to your jewels, from your hairstyle to your very posture, communicated something to the court. Strength, humility, extravagance, or frugality. Every choice was dissected by allies and enemies alike. Breakfast is a quiet ordeal. The king is absent again, called to deal with unrest on the western border. You sit with your steward, your chaplain, and two elderly barons who seem to have made it their life's work to outlive all rivals. They talk of taxes, of repairs to the southern bridge, of a new physician who's just arrived at court. You nod, ask questions, and do your best to keep your mind sharp. Your gaze drifts occasionally to the doorway, half hoping for news, half dreading it. After the meal, you attend to the daily petitions. The doors of the audience chamber open, and a line of supplicants files in, some hopeful, some desperate, a few already resigned. A mother asks for mercy for her daughter, accused of stealing a coin. A merchant claims his neighbour poisoned his well. An old knight wants his lands restored after years of loyal service. Each case is a puzzle, a tangle of truth and half-truth, and you must weigh it all, pronouncing judgment with the calm authority expected of you. A quirky tidbit. It's said some queens carried a lucky stone or small relic hidden in their sleeves. A saint's tooth, a smooth pebble, or a scrap of embroidered cloth. Something to touch in moments of doubt. Today you finger a little pouch sewn into your cuff, inside which sits a shard of your late mother's rosary. You squeeze it each time your confidence wavers. You commute the young woman's sentence, sending her to work in the kitchens. You fine the merchant's neighbour, but order both men to share water from the same well, hoping they'll learn civility before their children's children inherit the grudge. For the knight, you promise a hearing with the king, though you suspect his lands will never be restored. Some losses are as permanent as winter. The audience over, you slip away for a breath of fresh air. The castle gardens are muddy, the last of last night's rain glistening on bare branches. You pace the gravel walk, listening to the clatter of crows overhead. For a brief stolen moment, you allow yourself to remember what freedom felt like. Running through fields as a girl, hair loose, dress torn, no one watching. Historians still argue whether queens in your position truly envy their childhoods, or if memory simply softened the rough edges. Some letters suggest a real longing for the past, while others are brisk, practical, insisting that adulthood, no matter how circumscribed, offered its own satisfactions. A page finds you and bows, holding out a letter. The seal is unfamiliar. You open it on the garden bench, reading carefully. It's from a distant duchess, an invitation to a christening, thick with pleasantries and layered with veiled questions about alliances and marriages. You know your response will be weighed, interpreted, and perhaps even used as evidence in another kingdom's intrigue. You begin composing your reply in your head, already weary at the games you must play. You spend the next hour in the chapel. It's cold, the smell of old wax and stone settling in your bones. You kneel, praying, sometimes aloud, sometimes in silence, for patience, for wisdom, for your child's safety and your husband's clarity. Your faith is not what it was when you first arrived. Now it's a quiet, battered thing, worn down to essentials but steady. The saints, if they're listening, get more questions than thanks these days. A quirky tidbit. Some queens would carve their initials into the backs of the chapel pews, hidden from the priests, leaving a secret record of their presence, proof that they prayed, if not always believed. You run your fingers over a worn patch in the wood and wonder if it's from a queen like you, desperate to be remembered for more than just her titles. Noon brings another round of duties, letters to sign, plans to approve, a visit to the nursery where your son is being fussed over by a half-dozen women. You take him in your arms, marvelling again at the strange, fierce love that fills your chest. He laughs, gurgles, and tries to chew on your necklace. You let him, knowing it will amuse him for at least a few minutes before he's bored and howling for something new. A mainstream historical fact. The education of royal children was often overseen by the Queen, at least in their earliest years. You are expected to set the tone, choosing tutors, selecting languages, encouraging proper manners and, when old enough, piety. The hope is that your child will become a ruler both feared and beloved, a living testament to your success or failure. In the afternoon, there is a council meeting, more news from the border, rumours of a new alliance against your kingdom, the slow-moving drama of a failed harvest in the north. The men talk over one another, and you take notes, occasionally interjecting with a question or suggestion. Sometimes you're heeded, sometimes ignored. You have learned to plant your ideas quietly, so that later they might bloom in someone else's mouth, claimed as their own. Evening falls and the castle changes mood. The rooms are lit with torches, shadows dancing on the walls. There is a quiet meal with the king, just the two of you for once. He is tired, distracted, his words measured. You talk of your son, of the state of the castle, of the rumours you've heard. He listens, occasionally smiles, and once even laughs. You savour these moments, rare and fleeting as they are. After dinner you attend to the evening prayers, sitting quietly in the chapel with your ladies. You lead the psalms, your voice steady despite the fatigue. They look to you for strength, for reassurance that tomorrow will come and that you will still be there. Queen, mother, guide. As the night deepens, you make a final round through the nursery. Your son is sleeping, a small fist curled around his blanket. You tuck him in, brush a kiss over his brow and whisper, promises you cannot be sure you'll keep. Historians still argue whether queens went to sleep content or haunted. You suspect the answer is both. You walk back to your chamber, the castle echoing with the quiet footsteps of the night guard. You slip between cold sheets, pull the blanket up to your chin, and let yourself drift. You dream, sometimes of freedom, sometimes of love, sometimes of nothing at all. Tonight you let the world fall away, content to simply breathe. The sound of church bells breaks your sleep, their slow, solemn song vibrating through every stone of the castle. You surface groggy and stiff, still tangled in a dream of childhood orchards, the taste of green apples and laughter lingering even as the cold reality presses back in. Dawn has painted the world pale blue, and the fire in your hearth is a feeble ember. There's a hush to this hour, a lull before the pulse of duty resumes. For a heartbeat you imagine slipping away through the corridors, past the guards and courtyards, out into the wild fields beyond the walls. But even your fantasies end at the moat. You rise carefully, stretching the stiffness from your shoulders, and pad to the window. The gardens below are shrouded in early mist, and you watch the silhouettes of workers moving among the sleeping rose bushes and dormant herbs. One woman, bareheaded and stooped, waves a rake through the fog, scattering a cluster of doves that rise and wheel, startled, into the blue. You envy her uncomplicated purpose. Your own day is not so simple. The castle comes alive around you in increments. The sound of feet in the hall, the soft clatter of trays, the distant bark of dogs. Your ladies-in-waiting appear one by one, fresh-faced, their voices hushed as they lay out your dress and draw a steaming bath. You try to be grateful for their care, but sometimes the fuss and flutter of hands just makes you feel small. Today, the gown is green, embroidered at the cuffs with ivy and acorns, the sort of symbolism the king likes. You wear it because it is expected, not because it is yours. A mainstream historical fact. For centuries, clothing was a message. Colours, embroidery, and even the smallest detail were selected to signal alliances, wealth, and loyalty. Green, in many courts, suggested fertility and hope, an irony not lost on you as you consider the parade of male courtiers who have congratulated you on your blessing as if you were simply a favoured field. The nursemaid arrives with your son, bundled and squirming, rosy-cheeked and impatient to be fed. He clamps his toothless mouth on your finger, making you laugh despite yourself. You cradle him against your shoulder and rock him gently, humming a lullaby from your childhood. For a few minutes you are simply a mother, safe in the unhurried bubble of the morning, but soon the day reclaims you. The king sends word that you're needed at council. You hand the baby off to his nurse, exchange a few quiet words. Wrap him well, watch for coughs, send for me if he fusses, then follow the page through the winding halls, down staircases slick with damp, past archways where you once dared to run as a bride. The council is already in session. The table is crowded. Lords and clerics and a new advisor who watches you with the too bright eyes of an ambitious man. The topic today is security. There's been a theft. A shipment of wool vanished somewhere between two towns, and the merchants are clamouring for justice. The king looks weary. His gaze flicks to you as you take your seat, silent request in his eyes. A mainstream historical fact. Medieval queens were often called upon to mediate disputes not only within the royal family, but across the entire network of the kingdom. Your presence alone can settle tempers, or fan them into new flames. You listen as the men bicker and accuse, each clinging to their own version of events. You ask a few quiet questions, noticing how voices soften when you speak. Was there rain on the day of the theft? Who else knew the route? Did anyone profit from the loss? Your questions are practical but never blunt. It's a kind of dance, a performance laced with hidden meaning. Historians still argue whether queens like you wielded soft power or merely played the role expected of them. Some say your words could tip the scales of justice. Others insist the decisions were always made elsewhere by men who gave you the illusion of agency. A quirky tidbit. Some queens are rumoured to have kept coded diaries, little books tucked behind loose stones or beneath the cushions of their window seats, where they recorded not only the truths of the court, but also the secret meanings of their own gestures and silences. You think of this as you watch the men talk, wondering which of them keeps secrets of their own. The matter of the wool is settled, mostly, a compromise with promises of restitution and a warning that any new losses will be met with swift punishment. As the council breaks up, a few of the older lords bow to you, grateful for your intervention. The ambitious advisor lingers, murmuring praise. You thank him coolly and let your eyes pass over him like rain. Flattery is cheap, and you have little use for it. You retreat to the solar, a bright corner room with tapestries of hunting scenes, and a chest filled with silks and ribbons. Your ladies gather around, some to mend their embroidery, others to read aloud from a volume of Arthurian tales. You pick up your needle, threading a strand of gold through a linen handkerchief. Another gift for the chapel, another small mark of yourself stitched into the fabric of the castle. A quirky tidbit. It was said that the best-stitched handkerchief could cure headaches or heartbreaks if pressed to the brow with enough hope. You've never believed the magic, but you like to imagine your handiwork comforting someone long after you're gone. The afternoon is interrupted by a visit from the Queen Dowager, your husband's mother. She's formidable, her voice low and clipped, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. She comments on your embroidery, your dress, the way you hold your tea. It's a test, as it always is. You answer politely, never contradict, but you do not yield. After all, you are queen now. The old queen may grumble, but she no longer rules. The conversation turns to the question of your son's future. The dowager has opinions. Too many, perhaps. Tutors from the old country, a nurse with better breeding, a stricter regimen. You listen, nod, promise to consider her advice. You know better than to refuse outright. You have learned to yield like a willow, bending only as much as you must. A mainstream historical fact. Queens Dowager, especially those who survived into old age, often wielded great influence at court, sometimes undermining or even outmanoeuvring their daughters-in-law. Dynastic conflict was often as fierce between royal women as between men, just played out with subtler weapons. After her departure, you let your composure drop. The ladies exchange sympathetic glances. Everyone knows what it's like to be judged by someone who will never be satisfied. You pick up your needle again and lose yourself in the rhythm of the stitches, the gentle hush of the room, the stories swirling around you. You spend the rest of the afternoon attending to small matters, supervising repairs to the chapel's roof, approving a shipment of spices from the south, hearing the concerns of a young maid accused of losing a valuable ring. The ring is found, the maid weeps with relief, and you remind her to keep her wits about her. You know what it is to be young, lost, and terrified in these echoing halls. A quirky tidbit. Some queens were believed to have the power to cure minor ailments simply by touching the afflicted. A royal touch. You've never cured anything more serious than a bruised ego, but you've learned the importance of reassurance and gentle words. As dusk settles over the castle, the hall fills with the scents of roasting meat and baking bread. The feast tonight is smaller, more intimate, just the family and a handful of close advisors. The king is quiet, his thoughts on the border unrest, but your son's laughter softens his mood. You watch them together, father and son, and something in you unclenches. For a while, you let yourself hope that there is still joy to be found here. After supper, you retire early, pleading a headache. In truth, you crave solitude. You pace the length of your chamber, the thick rug muffling your steps, and let your thoughts drift. You remember the words of the dowager, the sly praise of the young adviser, the laughter of your child. You wish you could gather these moments in your hands and smooth them out. Keep only the parts that make you strong. You sit at your writing desk and compose a letter to your sister, a story of your son's new tooth, of the garden's first crocus, of the tapestry you've begun for the chapel. You tuck a pressed violet between the pages, hoping it will survive the journey. You sign your name, not as queen, but as sister, and hope the letter brings a small warmth across the distance. Night falls with a shudder of wind against the window. You kneel by your bed, whispering prayers for peace, for safety, for the courage to face another day. You know the world outside your walls is restless. Peasants muttering, lords jockeying for power, the ever-present threat of war simmering beneath the surface. But for now, in this small, quiet room, you are simply a woman who has survived another day. You climb into bed, drawing the blankets up to your chin, and close your eyes. You listen for your son's soft breathing in the next room, for the familiar creaks of the castle settling. The world is dangerous, uncertain, but you have learned to find comfort in the small, ordinary things. A steady stitch, a kind word, the laughter of a child. You let sleep claim you, hopeful that, for a few hours at least, your dreams will be gentle. The sky is heavy with rain. It rattles against the window panes, soaks the roofs, and turns the castle's courtyards into shallow rivers. You wake to the steady, drumming hush, grateful for the excuse to linger under the covers a little longer. The world outside is grey, muffled, as if someone has thrown a thick cloak over the kingdom. Even the bustling routine of the household feels subdued. No galloping hooves in the yard, no shouts from the gatehouse, just the sound of water and the occasional clink of armour as the night watch is relieved. You watch the silver beads snake down the glass, tracing their path as you let your mind wander. Rainy days are rare moments of reprieve in a queen's life. Fewer visitors brave the mud, fewer lords seek audiences. The rhythm of the castle slows to something almost peaceful. Still, duty does not wait for the weather. Soon enough, your ladies arrive. They bring news that a hunting party was caught in the storm. 3 lords and a stable boy, all soaked and shivering, rescued by shepherds on the moor. One lord is furious, another finds the whole mishap hilarious, and the third is pretending he was never there. You stifle a smile and suggest hot broth be sent to the men's quarters, along with a dry change of clothes. This too is queenship, mending bruised egos and soothing wounded pride as often as tending to the kingdom's larger ills. You take your breakfast beside the hearth, wrapped in a shawl. The baby, now teething, is cranky, red-faced, and determined to chew on anything within reach, including your thumb. The nursemaid paces with him, humming softly, her feet leaving faint tracks on the rushes. You sip your watered wine, eating bread and cheese, and watch the world blur beyond the windows. A mainstream historical fact: medieval castles were cold, damp places. Fires blazed in every room, yet most could not banish the chill or the damp. The stones sweated in spring and autumn. In winter, frost bloomed on the walls. Many noblewomen, queens included, developed rheumatism or the ague, suffering in silence behind the tapestries. The morning is spent in correspondence. You write letters to lords in distant counties, inquiring after the spring planting and offering condolences for the drowned sheep and muddy crops the rain has likely brought. You draft a careful note to the mother of a young knight killed in a border skirmish, words soft enough to console, firm enough to remind her that her son's sacrifice was not in vain. A page brings news of a visiting abbot who is stranded in the next village by the flood. The king sends for you, asking your advice. Should he send horses or wait for the waters to recede? You suggest sending a covered carriage and warm cloaks. The abbot is elderly and revered. A gesture of royal courtesy now could yield a favour later. The king agrees, and you watch with a certain satisfaction as your words take shape in the world, however quietly. A quirky tidbit. It was said in some courts that a queen could bring the sun with a smile, but more often she brought umbrellas. The very first rain hats were woven of reeds and waxed linen, and some queens insisted on special slippers lined with rabbit fur for the endless damp corridors. The council gathers in the afternoon, the air in the great hall heavy with the smell of wet wool and mud. The king presides, but today he leans on you more than usual. A dispute between two merchants has festered for weeks. Now, one accuses the other of cheating, the other retorts with a claim of witchcraft. You listen, asking each man to explain himself, watching the way they shift and sweat under your gaze. Historians still argue whether queens truly dispelled such tensions, or simply added a veneer of civility to proceedings already decided elsewhere. Some say women brought the touch of peace to male quarrels. Others believe the queen was merely the king's echo, her voice respected only when it suited the men's ambitions. You ask pointed questions. Who witnessed the exchange? Why did you wait so long to complain? Until the men's anger subsides to sullen muttering. You offer a compromise. Each pays a fine, which goes to repair the village well. Both men leave dissatisfied, but the well will be fixed, and their pride will survive. The king praises your wisdom in front of the court, and you notice the old Queen Dowager's lips pressed together in approval, or perhaps annoyance. After the meeting you escape to the nursery. The rain has made your son restless. He pounds his fists on the cradle rails and shrieks for freedom. You scoop him up, his chubby arms wrapping around your neck. His giggles make the gloom recede, if only for a moment. You pace the room, showing him the patterns on the woven carpet, the glint of a silver rattle, the way the rain puddles on the window ledge. You tell him stories, of knights who rode into thunderstorms, of clever foxes who outwitted hungry wolves, of queens who kept singing even when the world grew dark. A quirky tidbit. Some queens composed lullabies or poems for their children, weaving coded lessons and gentle warnings into verses sung only at bedtime. The cradle songs of one 12th century queen are still sung by village women today, the true author's name long forgotten. You hand your son to the nurse for his nap and steal a moment alone. The rain has slowed. You take a lamp and walk the long gallery, pausing to look at the portraits, queens and kings in their finery, each with secrets and stories locked behind painted eyes. You wonder how many of these women felt as you do, powerful and powerless in turns, aching for their children, longing for one day of anonymity, one day to be simply themselves. There is a knock. A messenger bows and hands you a letter. Your sister, writing from her new home in the distant north. She tells you of the snow, the endless white, her loneliness and her hopes. She misses your laughter, remembers your games beneath the orchard trees. You answer with a long, rambling letter, half confession, half prayer, that you hope will bring her comfort. You tuck in a sprig of rosemary from the garden, a promise that memory survives distance. The day fades, rain still ticking against the glass. The hall is quiet tonight, the king's mood reflective, the courtiers subdued. A meal of venison stew and stewed apples, a toast to the abbot, whose carriage has not yet returned. You eat in near silence, each lost in your own thoughts. After supper you sit by the fire with your embroidery, your ladies clustered around, mending, gossiping, singing soft songs as they work. You finish the purse for your son, set aside a scarf for the nursemaid, and start a new square for the chapel altar. Needlework is one of the few places where your choices are wholly your own. Each pattern, each colour, is a secret language, a thread of your spirit woven into the castle. A quirky tidbit. Some queens stitched hidden messages into altar cloths, names, dates, even prayers for deliverance, trusting that only God and the sharpest-eyed priest would ever see them. As night falls, you pause at your son's bedside watching him sleep, his face soft in the lamp's glow. The world outside is sodden and cold, but in this room you are safe. You think of all the women who came before you, all the songs and stories that connect you to them, and you find comfort in the knowledge that, though you are often lonely, you're never truly alone. Historians still argue whether queens understood the full extent of their influence, the quiet ways they shaped the world, the gentle power of their presence. Some say the world's great battles were decided not only in council halls and on battlefields, but in the nurseries and solar chambers, in whispered words and lullabies. You kneel by the window and whisper a last prayer, for your son, for your kingdom, for rain that will end by morning. You slip into bed, listening to the tap of water on the stone sill, and feel sleep wash over you. A gentle rain, a blanket against the dark. Thunder rumbles in the early hours, making the castle groan and tremble in its ancient bones. You wake, heart pounding, unsure if the sound was a cannon in some distant war, or just the sky having its say. For a moment, the darkness feels absolute. A soft hand over your eyes, a reminder that even queens are at the mercy of forces beyond their control. When the lightning flashes, you see your son's cradle lit up for a heartbeat, his little fist curled, his brow furrowed as if already dreaming of battles. You smile in the dark, letting your fingertips brush his cheek, whispering comfort he doesn't need, but you do. The nursemaid sleeps on a pallet nearby, mouth open, snoring softly, a steady presence in the shifting world. You rise, wrap yourself in a heavy robe, and move quietly to the window. Rain pelts the glass. Far below the courtyards are black puddles, torchlight glinting off wet stone. You imagine the guards hunched in their cloaks, the horses stamping in their straw, the dogs curled tight in the kitchens. Somewhere in the keep the old Queen Dowager is probably awake too, counting her regrets or tallying your small errors on the abacus of her memory. A mainstream historical fact. The security of the castle was the Queen's concern as much as the King's. You were expected to keep an eye on the loyalty of the household, to sniff out discontent, to listen at doors, or more often, to train others to listen for you. The safety of your child and the whole future of the dynasty depended on your vigilance. As dawn struggles through the clouds, the household stirs. Servants dry the floors with straw, mop the stairs, sweep away the traces of mud. Your ladies arrive, faces pale and pinched by the stormy night. They dress you in blue velvet, smooth your hair, pin a silver brooch at your collar. You let them work, lost in your own thoughts, of the thunder, the child, the soft uncertainty that sits beneath every plan you make. Breakfast is a muted affair. The king is in a dark mood, snapping at the steward, drumming his fingers on the table. He's worried about news from the frontier, a new alliance among your neighbours, a rumour that an old rival is gathering mercenaries. You listen, offer gentle words, but he waves you away. Some days he wants your counsel. Others he wants you silent. You have learned to accept both. After the meal, a messenger arrives. A nervous boy, soaked and breathless, bearing a sealed letter. The king reads it in silence, his face tightening. He beckons you closer, shows you the broken seal. "A plot," he says, voice low. "They say someone close to us has been bribed. Someone in your retinue." The words are a blade, sharp, cold, impossible to parry. You feel the world tilt just a little. Who? You review the faces of your ladies, your maids, even the nursemaid. Who might betray you and why? You ask for details, but the king is already swept up in new plans, interrogations, secret watchers, rewards for information. You know you must be careful. A wrong word could condemn the innocent. A missed clue could doom you all. Historians still argue whether the threat of betrayal was constant or exaggerated, whether most court conspiracies were smoke and mirrors, or if queens truly slept with knives under their pillows. Some queens wrote of their own terror, others left only silence, their secrets buried in letters that never reached their destination. You spend the morning with your son, seeking comfort in the soft weight of him in your arms. You sing to him, trace the line of his jaw, promise him, fiercely, silently, that you will keep him safe. The nursemaid eyes you with concern, asks if you wish for anything special. You shake your head. The less said today, the better. A quirky tidbit. Medieval queens sometimes employed shadow maids, trusted women whose job was to watch the other servants, listening for secrets and warning the queen of trouble before it found her. The best shadow maids were invisible, part of the furniture, their reports hidden in the patterns of conversation over spinning wheels or while folding linens. You wonder if you can still trust yours, or if her silence is just another mask. By midday, the king has ordered a quiet investigation. Servants are questioned, guards are doubled at the doors. You keep your face serene, your tone light. You ask after your ladies' families, their health, their recent worries. You look for a flicker of guilt, a slip of the tongue. Nothing. Everyone is too careful, too polished. The only clue is a missing locket. Your favourite, a gift from your mother. It was on your dressing table last night and now it's gone. You mention it to the chief steward, voice casual. He promises to inquire, but you sense he's already thinking in other directions. A lost locket in these anxious hours is a cipher. Is it theft or message or just a careless hand? You escape to the chapel, the one place that still feels private. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of wax and lavender. You kneel, eyes closed, and let your mind race, through memories of laughter in your mother's garden, of whispered promises on your wedding night, of every moment you failed to see what was hidden in plain sight. You pray, not for miracles, but for clarity, for the wisdom to choose rightly. A quirky tidbit. Some queens left secret notes in chapel hymnals, coded messages for their allies, prayers that were really warnings, promises disguised as psalms. You run your fingers over the worn pages, wondering if you should write a message of your own. When you return, you find the castle changed. People move in clusters, talking behind their hands. The nursemaid keeps your son close. Even the dogs seem uneasy, pacing the halls. The old dowager queen sits in the solar, watching you with narrowed eyes, as if daring you to falter. You greet her as always, polite but distant. Her only reply is a nod, and then a question, pointed and hard. Can you be sure of anyone here? You know what she means. The answer is no. A mainstream historical fact. Royal courts were breeding grounds for paranoia. Espionage, blackmail, and rumour-mongering were constant threats. It wasn't just enemies you had to watch. Sometimes it was family, friends, even your own children. The right word spoken at the wrong time could send a dynasty toppling. You spend the afternoon writing letters, one to your sister, careful and vague, another to your father's old advisor, requesting advice. Each word is weighed, each phrase chosen for what it reveals and what it conceals. You wonder if your sister will read between the lines, if the old advisor is still clever enough to decode your message. There is a meeting with the king and his council. The room feels tight, airless, heavy with suspicion. Each man defends his own household, his own servants, casting blame like dice across the table. The king asks your opinion. You speak carefully. Fear makes honest men into liars, but sometimes the liar is just frightened. You urge caution. Rash justice breeds more resentment, and sometimes the true traitor is the one least suspected. The king listens, not entirely convinced. Historians still argue whether queens could ever truly clear themselves when suspicion took root, or if they simply learned to outlast each wave of rumour. There are tales of women destroyed by whispers, and others who survived, armoured by patience and silence until the storm blew past. Evening comes, and the sky finally clears. You walk in the garden with your son, holding him close as he marvels at the puddles and the brightening sky. You try to let the fresh air wash away your anxiety. The nursemaid trails behind, a watchful shadow, while the guards keep a respectful distance. The world seems for a moment almost normal. A quirky tidbit. In some courts, it was believed that walking barefoot on wet grass could wash away lies. You slip off your slippers, let the cold mud squish between your toes, and laugh when your son imitates you, his giggle a small rebellion against the day's tension. That night there is no feast, no gathering. The king retreats early, muttering about his enemies. You eat alone with your son and the nursemaid, savouring the simple meal. Warm bread, sharp cheese, poached pears. After, you tuck your son into bed and watch him sleep, one hand pressed against his chest, reassuring yourself of his heartbeat, his breath. You return to your own chamber, the locket still missing. You sit by the window, watching the moon rise over the damp rooftops, and think about the price of love, trust, and power. In the end, you decide you can only be responsible for your own choices, the kindness you offer, the courage you show, the hope you refuse to abandon. Historians still argue whether queens like you were brave or just stubborn, wise or merely lucky. You suspect all of these are true, in their time. You kneel, pray for peace, for the truth to come out, for another day with your child safe in your arms. When sleep finally claims you, it is deep and dreamless. In the quiet between storms, you find a little peace. You wake to a new and fragile peace. The rain is gone. Dawn spills a pale gold over the castle roofs, making the puddles shine like coins scattered by a careless hand. The air is sharp, scrubbed clean by the storm, and every sound, the distant call of a heron, the soft scrape of broom on stone, seems brighter, more honest than before. For a fleeting instant the world feels possible again, and you breathe deeply, savouring the freshness. You sit up slowly, listening for your son's steady breaths in the cradle. He's already awake, clutching a piece of linen, blue eyes fixed on you with the silent wisdom of children who know too much and say nothing. You lift him gently, holding him close, and find that his skin is warm, his gaze steady, the fever of worry finally broken, for both of you. Your ladies arrive, a little less tense than yesterday. There's laughter in their voices now, relief in the way they move through your chambers. The missing locket has been found, they announce. A scullery maid uncovered it beneath a pile of rushes in the lower corridor, dropped by some careless hand and forgotten in the chaos of the search. You take it, feeling the cool metal press into your palm, and resist the urge to clutch it like a talisman. The king comes to you before breakfast, his eyes red-rimmed but softer than before. He apologizes, awkwardly, the way only a man raised on war and suspicion can. There was no traitor, no plot, just a series of mistakes, rumours spun out of fear. He promises to be more careful, to trust you more. You accept his words, knowing that trust once shaken will always rattle in the wind. But you are grateful for the attempt. You offer forgiveness, not because it is expected, but because it is the only way to move forward. A mainstream historical fact. Medieval queens were often peacemakers not only between kingdoms, but within their own households. Their ability to forgive, to soothe, to turn suspicion aside, was as important as any treaty signed or battle won. Letters and chronicles praise queens for healing the wounds of pride, for making a home from a fortress. Breakfast is a quiet celebration. The kitchen staff bring sweet buns and honey, a rare treat. Your son coos and giggles, gumming pieces of soft bread while the nursemaid tells him stories in a sing-song voice. Your ladies linger over their cups, sharing news of family and friends, small joys and secret hopes. For once no one hurries, no one glances nervously at the door. You spend the morning walking the galleries. Sunlight slants through the tall windows, making motes of dust dance in the air. You pause to study a tapestry, a scene of hunting stags, the queen in the corner, her gown heavy with gold thread. You wonder if her smile was real or just the weaver's invention. You wonder how many queens have stared at their own likeness and failed to recognize the woman staring back. A quirky tidbit. In some courts, it was said that every queen's portrait held a hidden detail. A single unruly lock of hair, a wink of a ring, a twist in the embroidery. So the queen herself would always know the real woman, no matter what others saw. You smile, secretly searching for such a sign in your own tapestries. The day is mild, so you take your son into the gardens. The kitchen boy has set out slices of apple and bits of bread for the birds, and together you watch a flock of sparrows quarrel and scatter across the lawn. Your son's laughter is clear and wild, unburdened by yesterday's shadows. The garden seems to stretch wider today, green shoots already peeking through the damp earth, as if the storm's passing has coaxed the world into daring hope again. You pause at the old rose bush near the wall, its bare branches tangled and black against the sky. Last year, you stitched a ribbon there, a wish for your son's health, tied during the midsummer festival. The ribbon is faded now, but still knotted tight. You add another soft blue to match his eyes, and whisper a promise to keep him safe, no matter what storms come. Historians still argue whether the rituals and charms of queens had real power, or were simply the quiet assertion of control in an uncontrollable world. Some letters record queens weaving garlands, tying knots, burying scraps of parchment at the foot of ancient trees, little acts of magic to bind fate to their favour. You do it not out of superstition, but because it gives you something to do with your longing. You return inside for a midday meal. The king joins you, your son on his lap, both of them grinning at some private joke. It's a picture-perfect moment, and you cling to it, determined to remember that love and laughter are as much a part of survival as vigilance and patience. The afternoon brings a flurry of visitors. A delegation from a neighbouring barony arrives. 3 gentlemen and a lady with a sly, knowing smile. They present gifts: a carved wooden horse for your son, jars of preserved quince, a bolt of silk. You thank them graciously, noting the fine print of their banners, the quick glances they exchange. After the formal greetings, the lady draws you aside, her manner suddenly urgent. She warns you of a minor lord in your court, ambitious, easily flattered, recently in receipt of generous gifts from outside your lands. She says no more, but her meaning is clear. You file away the warning, adding it to your growing list of small dangers. A mainstream historical fact: in formal diplomacy, the passing of warnings, exchanging of gossip, and sharing of small confidences was often the Queen's greatest tool. Historians credit more than one peace treaty to a single afternoon spent in a garden or a tapestry frame. The delegation stays for the evening meal. The hall is warm with firelight and music drifts from the gallery. Your son sits beside you, watched over by the nursemaid. You play hostess, smiling at jokes, steering conversations, ensuring no one is left alone too long. You ask after the lady's children, the gentleman's estates, the state of the roads after the storm. Every answer is weighed, every laugh a subtle agreement. A quirky tidbit: some queens learn to read the language of fans, the flick of a wrist, the angle of a feather, the speed of a wave, using it to pass messages in full view of a crowded hall. Tonight, you notice the visiting lady's fan lingers over her heart every time the ambitious lord is mentioned. You wonder how much she's told you, and how much she hopes you'll discover on your own. Later, you retreat to your chamber, the gentle weight of your son in your arms. You sit by the fire, brushing his hair, singing him to sleep. The nursemaid thanks you for the sweet buns, eyes shining with gratitude. For a moment, the burdens of queenship seem to melt away, leaving only the small joys of mother and child. But as the castle grows quiet, you return to your writing desk. You draft a letter to the king's chief advisor, mentioning the gifts you received and the conversation in the garden. Your words are careful, layered, polite but pointed. You hint at vigilance, at the need to watch the ambitious lord, but you never accuse. You have learned that information is most valuable when it is offered without the sting of accusation. A mainstream historical fact. Many queens were the eyes and ears of their kings, reporting on court life, advising on character, and sometimes gathering intelligence from outside their borders. It was a delicate balance. Too much involvement and you risked anger. Too little, and you were easily sidelined. You finish the letter, seal it with wax, and watch the candle's flame flicker. Outside, the world is still. You kneel by your son's cradle, pressing a kiss to his brow, and whisper the same promise you make every night. You are loved. You are safe. You are mine. As you climb into bed, you feel the locket warm against your skin, the old worry finally easing. You close your eyes, letting the peace of the day settle over you like a blanket. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. More visitors, more schemes, more fragile truces to be tended. But tonight you allow yourself hope. Historians still argue whether the happiness of queens was real or performed, whether the quiet moments of joy survived the storms of duty and intrigue. You decide as you drift into sleep that it doesn't matter. The joy you feel is yours, and that is enough. The next morning brings a rare stretch of clear sky and a brittle sun, as if the world has briefly forgotten its storms and rivalries. You rise with a strange sense of lightness, every movement easy, each breath free of yesterday's dread. Your son wakes in a bright mood, babbling nonsense and demanding attention with eager hands. The castle echoes with his laughter as the nursemaid changes him, and you allow yourself a few extra minutes by the window, soaking in the sight of dewdrops on the grass and a new flush of green in the garden below. You know better than to trust these calm mornings. They are brief, precious interludes in a life ruled by routine, rumour, and ever-looming expectation. Still, you let yourself savour it. The warmth of the hearth, the company of your ladies in waiting as they bring news of the day. One has a mild fever. Another has heard that the baker's wife is expecting twins. Mundane human problems that remind you not everything in the world is chessboard. Breakfast is lively. The king joins you, more relaxed than you've seen him in weeks, and he allows your son to sit on his lap, bouncing him gently, while discussing repairs to the western wall. The boy's delight is infectious. You find yourself laughing with genuine ease, teasing your husband about his awkward grip on the child. The courtiers look on, some smiling fondly, others assessing the scene as they always do, measuring happiness as another form of power. A mainstream historical fact. Images of royal families at peace, of a king doting on his heir, a queen surrounded by loyal ladies, were sometimes staged for the court or for travelling envoys. A harmonious family was a symbol of a stable realm. But in these rare moments the image becomes the truth, and you allow yourself to believe it. After breakfast the day resumes its usual tempo. You're summoned to meet with a delegation of abbots, their habits stained with the dust of the road. They bring a gift, an illuminated psalter, the gold leaf flaking in the corners, the pages smelling faintly of incense and beeswax. You admire the craftsmanship and thank them sincerely, knowing their visit is as much about securing your favour as delivering the book. Their spokesman is an old man with watery eyes and a gentle smile. He asks for your support in petitioning the king for funds to repair their monastery, recently damaged by flooding. You promise to speak on their behalf and make a note to send the kitchens a basket of cheese and apples for their journey home. These are small gestures, but they travel far. A quirky tidbit. Queens were sometimes known as mothers of mercy in their own right, dispensers of charity, intercessors for the poor, and patrons of hospitals. The abbots leave your chamber grateful, already telling stories of your kindness to the servants as they pack up their wagon. Afterwards you find a quiet moment in the chapel. The light pours through stained glass, splashing coloured patterns onto the cold flagstones. You kneel, fingers tangled in prayer, whispering gratitude for the day's peace, and asking for the wisdom to weather whatever storms might follow. You reflect on how much your prayers have changed, less asking for miracles, more for the strength to endure what is real. You pause before the altar, tracing your son's name in the wax of a votive candle. The act feels both childish and brave, a tiny rebellion, a reminder to the saints that your hopes matter too. You return to your chambers to find your son playing on the carpet, his nursemaid showing him how to stack wooden cups. He topples them with gleeful violence, then claps his hands and demands you join in. You oblige, relishing the laughter, aware that these simple joys are the real heart of your reign, fragile, fleeting, and fiercely protected. A mainstream historical fact. Some of the best remembered queens were adored as much for their roles as mothers as for their politics. Their ability to be both wise counsellors and warm, accessible figures made them beloved by people of every rank. By midday, a summons arrives from the king's steward. An unexpected visitor has come from the southern marches, bringing news of the unrest. You change quickly, donning a formal gown, and make your way to the audience chamber. The messenger, a young woman with mud-caked boots and wind-chapped cheeks, bows low and recounts tales of bandit raids, the burning of 2 small villages, the need for soldiers and aid. You listen closely, asking careful questions. The woman's courage is plain. She risks much by speaking frankly to the court. You offer her food, a warm cloak, and your personal assurance that the king will respond. The king, summoned from his study, listens in silence, then promises reinforcements and a grant of grain. Later, he thanks you for your presence of mind, admitting quietly that he finds such appeals overwhelming. You squeeze his hand, wordless, knowing that being the kingdom's heart means absorbing much sorrow. Historians still argue whether queens in such moments were true agents of change, or merely sympathetic faces for hard realities. Some chronicles remember the compassionate queen as a mask, others as a force that swayed men to mercy and action. You hope to be both. The afternoon is a whirlwind. You visit the kitchen to oversee preparations for the evening meal, consult with the steward about repairs to the bridge, review accounts with the castle treasurer, and steal a few moments to walk the corridors with your son, pointing out every tapestry, every window with its coloured glass. You want him to know this place, to understand both its beauty and its burdens. A quirky tidbit. Children of the royal household were sometimes taught to identify every room in the castle by touch, sound, or smell, in case of fire or siege. You practice this with your son, turning it into a game. What room smells of lavender? Which hall echoes most when you shout? He giggles at your questions, absorbing lessons without even knowing it. As the sun sets, your thoughts return to the ambitious lord mentioned by the visiting lady. You observe him at supper, watching how he flatters the king, how quickly he laughs at every jest. You notice the way his eyes scan the room, weighing every movement, every whispered aside. You make a mental note to warn your husband, couching your concerns in gentle words that can be denied if overheard. The evening meal is lively: roast fowl, spiced turnips, fresh pears in honey. Musicians play, a juggler performs tricks for your son, and the court seems briefly, impossibly content. You catch the ambitious lord watching you, his smile too smooth, his bow a little too deep. You answer with a measured nod, holding his gaze a moment longer than necessary, making it clear you see him for what he is. A mainstream historical fact. Queens were sometimes the first line of defence against court intrigue. Their intuition, their web of alliances among the women and servants, often revealed plots before the king's own advisers could act. Later, you retreat to your solar. The fire is bright, and your ladies gather to read from a new poem brought by one of the abbots. You stitch a small bird onto your son's blanket, listening to the verses, tales of knights and distant lands, of love found and lost. Your mind wanders to your own story. Not just a queen, but a mother, a wife, a watcher at the gates of history. A quirky tidbit. Some queens recorded their dreams each morning, believing them to be prophecies or warnings. You recall last night's dream, a river swollen by rain, carrying away the castle walls, then shrinking to reveal a field of wildflowers. You wonder what it means, or if it's just your mind sifting through memories. When the evening winds down, you visit your son in the nursery. He is sleepy but restless, clinging to your hand as you sing him to sleep. The nursemaid dozes nearby, her face soft in the lamplight. You linger, stroking your son's hair, grateful for this ordinary miracle. As you prepare for bed, you pause by the window looking out over the darkened kingdom. Lamps flicker in distant cottages. A dog barks somewhere in the lower bailey. You press your forehead to the cool glass and promise yourself that you will remember this day, not just for its peace, but for the clarity it gave you about your own strength. Historians still argue whether queens were ever truly at rest, or whether their hearts always beat with the worry of what might come next. You know the answer, but for tonight, you allow yourself to sleep deeply, trusting that you have done enough. You drift into dreams with the taste of honey still on your tongue, your son's soft breath in your memory, and the certainty that tomorrow, no matter how stormy, will find you ready. The season begins to turn, the sun rising earlier, the shadows softening as the land stretches towards spring. The castle breathes a little easier, chimneys smoke less, the rushes are changed more often, and you begin to see windows thrown open to let in the new air. The cold, punishing silence of winter is lifted, replaced by the hum of preparation and hope. You wake to the chorus of birds, their song filtering through your thick stone walls. Your son is already awake, shrieking with delight at the first rays of sun, small fists pounding his blanket as if demanding the day hurry along. You scoop him into your arms, nuzzling his hair, and let him watch while your ladies bustle about, laying out your linen and pearls, gossiping softly about the market's new strawberries and a washerwoman's runaway goose. Today is the day of the spring market, and the castle is alive with energy. From your window, you see stalls being raised in the lower courtyard, pennants snapping in the fresh breeze. Merchants from distant towns wheel in barrels and crates, wine from the south, wool from the hills, pots of honey and baskets of green herbs. For once, the kingdom feels like a family, every part of it drawn together in the noisy, fragrant tangle of commerce. A mainstream historical fact. Medieval queens were often patrons of seasonal fairs and markets, granting charters or personally blessing the first day's trade. Their presence ensured peace and encouraged distant traders to risk the journey. You know your arrival is as much a performance as a privilege, and you prepare accordingly. Your ladies dress you in your finest, but not so fine as to shame the merchants. You choose a blue kirtle, modestly trimmed, and pin a brooch in the shape of a lily. Your hair is left in a single braid, a symbol of openness and peace, and you carry your son at your hip as you descend to the courtyard. Your arrival is met with cheers, a flurry of bows and curtsies, and a rain of petals thrown by village girls, their faces bright with excitement. You make your rounds, stopping at each stall, sampling honeycombs, admiring bolts of dyed cloth, pausing to offer your blessing over a new litter of piglets. Your son reaches out with sticky hands, enchanted by a basket of puppies, and you laugh with him, feeling, for the first time in weeks, like an ordinary woman surrounded by neighbours. A quirky tidbit. It was custom at some fairs for the queen to choose one lucky child to receive a small silver coin, a gesture that would be remembered in village tales for generations. Today you hand a coin to a little girl whose freckles and quick grin remind you of your own childhood. Her mother weeps with joy, and the crowd presses closer to catch your words and your smile. By midday the sun is high and the market is in full swing. The king joins you, walking among the people, trading good-natured jests with farmers and merchants. He hoists your son onto his shoulders and lets him inspect the cheese stalls, making a great show of seeking the king's taste tester. The courtiers, so often distant, so careful, join in the spirit, tasting sweetmeats and bartering for trinkets. You watch the old Queen Dowager haggle with a pepper merchant, her dignity forgotten for a moment of laughter. A mainstream historical fact. These public displays of unity and plenty were essential to royal reputation. Chroniclers recorded the Queen's kindness, the King's humour, the apparent health of their children, as proof that the realm was just and blessed. Historians now debate whether the peace these days projected was real, or merely a brief performance hiding deeper troubles. You know the answer is both. In the afternoon, you slip away to a quiet corner of the garden, your son napping in your lap. You're joined by the visiting lady from the neighbouring barony, her fan fluttering with hidden messages. She tells you quietly that the ambitious lord's letters have been intercepted. He was indeed plotting to curry favour with rivals across the border. The king is already aware, she says, but your vigilance has not gone unnoticed. A quirky tidbit. Some queens rewarded informants not with gold, but with secret tokens, embroidered handkerchiefs, painted miniatures, small locked caskets. The lady shows you a tiny brooch, shaped like a heart, gifted by a queen to her own mother for keeping a perilous secret. You trace the pattern, thinking of all the ways women safeguard the threads of power. Evening brings a banquet in the great hall, a celebration of the market's success. The tables groan with food, roasted lamb, bowls of sugared almonds, flagons of golden ale. Minstrels sing of spring and hope, their voices echoing in the high, bright rafters. The king, in a generous mood, calls for a round of toasts to the merchants, to the village children, to the queen and her wise heart. You blush at the praise, but accept it gracefully. The ambitious lord is not present. He has been sent north to oversee distant holdings, far from the heart of the court. You note the relief in the eyes of several courtiers, and the slight knowing nod from the Dowager Queen. Historians still argue whether queens wielded justice with a mother's mercy, or a politician's coldness. Some called them the heart of the realm, others the velvet glove over the mailed fist. You hope to be both, blending gentleness and resolve as the day demands. Later, when the torches burn low and the children are carried off to bed, you steal a quiet moment in the garden. The moon is a silver coin overhead, the air cool and fresh. You stand among the shadows, listening to the laughter that lingers in the halls, feeling for once at home in your own skin. You think of your son's future, the choices he will face, the burdens he will inherit. You vow, silently, to teach him not just how to rule, but how to listen, how to see the quiet, invisible pains that power brings. You want him to remember the freckled girl at the market, the lady with her secret fan, the lessons hidden in games and gardens. A quirky tidbit. It was said that a queen's true legacy was measured not in gold or armies, but in the stories whispered by firesides, of the days she brought peace, the justice she offered, the children she comforted. You hope that someday the story of this day will be told to a child who needs to know that kindness is its own kind of courage. You return inside, tucking your son beneath his covers, pressing a kiss to his brow. You sit by the fire, your ladies nearby, and stitch a final motif onto his blanket. A dove, wings outstretched in flight. They ask you what it means, and you say, hope. It is enough. As the castle settles for the night, you linger at your writing desk, penning a letter to your sister, sharing news of the market, the laughter, the unexpected happiness. You end the letter with a single line. May your days be as bright as this one. You seal it with wax, imprinting it with your locket, the old symbol of your family, your past and your present bound together. You kneel for one last prayer, offering thanks not for power or safety, but for the simple chance to have been present for these ordinary miracles. You climb into bed, exhausted and content, and sleep with the softest smile, dreaming not of thrones, but of gardens, sunlight, and the unbroken trust of your child. Historians still argue whether a queen's greatest triumphs were the ones no one ever saw. You have begun to believe that they are right. The days grow longer. The sun lingers over the fields until late in the evening. painting the castle's stone walls with gold and rose. The air is filled with birdsong and the soft laughter of servants cleaning winter's soot from the windows. Each day blends gently into the next, and the bitter memory of the cold, suspicious winter recedes into a story you tell yourself at night to remember what you've survived. You rise before dawn, not out of duty but from habit. The hush of early morning is sacred, the only hour when the castle is truly yours. You savour your privacy, padding quietly to the window and resting your forehead on the cool glass. The fields are a patchwork of green and gold. Far off, you see women turning the soil in kitchen gardens, children chasing geese, a boy waving to you from the stable roof. You wave back, laughing softly. The world feels small, safe, full of promise. Your son sleeps a little longer these days, his body stretched with new growth. When he wakes, he demands to be carried to every window to greet the sun and the birds and the old greyhound sprawled on the courtyard stones. The two of you share a private breakfast. Soft cheese, sweet rolls, apples so crisp they crack between your teeth. The nursemaid lingers by the door, humming contentedly as she mends a torn tunic, her presence now as comforting as the softest blanket. The king joins you, grinning at your son's sticky cheeks, lifting him high in the air until they are both giggling. There is no council meeting today, no delegation waiting at the gate. You are free for a moment to simply be a family. These are the days you wish you could press between the pages of a book, keeping them forever fragrant and bright. A mainstream historical fact. Springtime brought renewal, not just to the land but to the court itself. Many kingdoms held festivals in April and May, rituals of rebirth and celebration, meant to drive out winter's ghosts and ensure good fortune for the harvest. The Queen's presence was always the centrepiece, her crown garlanded with flowers, her steps blessing the fields, her laughter taken as a promise that the land would prosper. You walk the grounds with your son and the king, greeting tenants, blessing lambs, watching children weave wildflowers into chains for the maypole. You toss coins to a group of minstrels and allow your son to choose his favourite tune, a cheerful song about a fox in a henhouse. For a little while everyone forgets their rank. You sit in the grass and listen to music, and when the king kisses you in full view of the court, no one dares tease or titter. A quirky tidbit. During some spring festivals, it was tradition for the Queen to judge a contest of riddles or stories. Winners were awarded ribbons, small purses of coin, or the right to dance the first round with the royal family. You find yourself presiding over just such a contest, your son on your lap, the king at your side. You clap for the best riddle, award a coin to a girl who spins a tale of dragons and rainbows, and marvel at the way joy can knit a community together. Afternoon brings a moment of quiet. The king takes your son to see the horses, giving you time to rest in your solar. You stretch out on the window seat, sunlight warm on your face, and let yourself drift between waking and dreaming. Your mind is filled with images of laughter and sunlight, the scent of new grass, the trust in your son's eyes when he reaches for you. But even in peace, you cannot fully shed your role. The steward arrives with a report on the year's accounts. The nursemaid seeks your advice about a sick child in the village. Your ladies bring word of a quarrel between two kitchen maids. You answer each call with patience, understanding that these small, constant acts of care are the real work of a queen. The power you wield now is not in grand decrees or public justice, but in gentleness, fairness, the promise that someone is always listening. A mainstream historical fact. The authority of medieval queens, especially in times of peace, was often wielded through soft governance, quiet interventions, charitable acts, and the fostering of loyalty through kindness. These efforts were rarely recorded in chronicles, but shaped the realm in ways that outlasted battles and treaties. Later you slip out into the orchard with your son, gathering wildflowers and watching the bees. He toddles after you, giggling at the way petals cling to his sleeves, delighted by every butterfly. You teach him to recognize the plants, lavender for sleep, thyme for courage, rosemary for remembrance. You hope these lessons will root deep, giving him a secret language for hope and healing long after you're gone. A quirky tidbit. Some queens kept personal herb gardens, believing that tending to growing things brought luck and clarity. A few even brewed their own medicines, remedies for fever, balms for bruises, taught by midwives and old women who knew the secrets of leaves and roots. As the sun dips low, preparations begin for the evening's feast, a celebration of spring, open to every soul in the castle. Tables are set in the great hall and out in the yard, the air thick with the smell of roasting lamb and new bread. Children weave flower crowns for everyone. You wear yours with pride, feeling less like a figure on a coin and more like a woman among friends. The king gives a toast to the future, the court answers with cheers, and you lift your son onto your hip, showing him the dancing, the firelight, the faces glowing with happiness. For a few sweet hours, worry is impossible. You slip away as the stars come out, your son asleep against your shoulder. The castle is quiet, the halls lined with flickering candles. In your chamber, you undress him, bathe his feet, and tuck him beneath his favourite blanket, the one embroidered with doves and hope. He sleeps with one hand curled around your finger, refusing to let go until his dreams have carried him far away. You write a final letter to your sister, telling her of the festival, the riddle contest, the taste of sweet wine, the promise of a new season. You add a pressed flower to the parchment, your own wish for her happiness. Historians still argue whether queens were the architects of peace, or simply its luckiest beneficiaries. Some say the happiness of a court was a mirror for the queen's heart. You wonder if, after all that's passed, the greatest power you possess is the ability to mend what was broken, to turn suspicion into trust, loneliness into belonging, and memory into hope. And now the castle dims, torches guttering in the stone corridors, the world settling into a soft hush. You sit by the window, wrapped in a shawl, your heart as calm as the quiet earth outside. The worries of winter are behind you. Spring, with all its golden promise, has settled deep into your bones. You listen to the gentle breathing of your sleeping son, the distant song of a nightingale, the slow and steady peace that comes when every door is locked and every trouble set aside for the night. Your thoughts drift over the long, winding path that brought you here, through storms and rumours and the daily rituals of endurance. You remember the faces of those who stood with you, the hands that lifted you when you faltered, the simple joys that made each hardship bearable. You are a queen, yes, but also a mother, a friend, a watcher at the edge of dawn. Let your breath slow. Let the gentle weight of your own story soothe you. The pain of the past, the burdens of the crown, they fade in the softness of this hour. Tomorrow you will rise and meet the world again. Tonight you are safe, beloved, and at rest. The wind stirs the curtains. You close your eyes, your hand resting over your heart, and let sleep take you, soft and deep as spring earth, steady as the stars. The forgotten pain of the medieval queens at last finds a place to settle, a quiet place where hope and peace can blossom. Sweet dreams.